Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to a brand new season of Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this September 17th, 2024. Tonight we have a brand new topic and a brand new guest to discuss that topic. It's the Jehovah's Witness and insight into being involved in very high control groups like the Jehovah's Witness. I know that sometimes we are very tolerant of different religions and denominations on this show, but there are exceptions to every rule, and this is one of them. We'll be talking a great deal about why tonight. You don't want to miss it. Very important information to come. Don't go away. Well, hello everybody to season 10 of Vestiges After Dark. Can you believe it that all these years ago we started this little podcast in the most in the most humble of ways? It was actually quite poorly organized, I think you could say. We just kind of threw it out there and it just grew into what it is now, which I think we've come a long way when you think about the fact that we used to be audio only and it was a terrible sound quality. It sounded like you were talking over the phone, and now we have high definition video. So we've come so far in such a well, I guess it has been a long time, so I really can't say a short time, but it's just nice that we're here for season 10. And I like the fall season. I know that the winter spring season is larger, but I really enjoy the fall season, even though it is shorter, just because it is sort of the precursor to the holidays. And, this is really coming into my time of year. And I really definitely look forward to spending it with all of you to be able to share some of the interesting discussions that we are going to have this season. We've got some great topics coming up. The schedule is tentatively on the YouTube channel if you want to look ahead to see upcoming videos. Most of the ones that are, all of the ones that are recorded there are pretty much set in stone. There's a few dates that haven't been pinned down yet. Part of it is because there's been some interesting developments with cases around this time of year. I guess cases ramp up. I get busier. So we've got to go to Las Vegas, in about a week or two to be able to take care of another case that's, happening out there or resolve one. That should not interfere with this show, but I have another case coming up in the UK, and that one will interfere with this show. So we initially planned to bring you 9 episodes this season. It's probably going to end up being 8. I apologize for that. It just depends on whenever I get sent out to the UK, assuming everything goes as is anticipated. But keep up, keep yourself subscribed to this channel. And that way you won't miss anything, any updates and any changes. You'll be able to see them. Make sure you also like and subscribe to every video that we put up there so that you have the reminders, have notifications on so you know when we go live and you know when there's a show that's coming up. That way you won't miss anything. Of course, we appreciate all of you for tuning in from week to week, and we thank you for that. I know that we still haven't crossed that great barrier to where our live audience is larger than our on-demand audience. Maybe we never will. Maybe that's just unrealistic. I don't know. I've never talked to people in radio to see what those stats are today. So I don't really know if live listenership is just typically down in general, or if it's just, smaller shows like this one. I don't know. But I do know that we are alive and kicking in the on-demand world. So it's wonderful. And I don't want to trivialize all of you who actually do download this show on the various platforms where this is an audio only podcast. I appreciate that too. And we thank you for, tuning in and being a part of it in any way that you want to. If you have questions for us, remember, you can always email the church at office@nicolean.org. That's office@nicolean.org. And, if you have a question, it will get to Brandon, and Brandon will bring it to me for questions from the ether. So there's many ways that you can be a part of this show, even if you are somebody that listens to it when we're not on the air, not live at least. Okay, so this is, a new start here, and this is great because we've got we got Jamie and Brandon and Father Chris all calling in or connecting in from Zoom. Jamie is not with us physically tonight, but she's here with us through the magic of the internet. So how are you doing tonight, Jamie?
I'm doing good. Sorry I'm not there sitting next to you in the studio. I had a little bit of a spill this afternoon while putting up Halloween decorations.
Yeah.
So
the spider got you, didn't it?
I saved the spiders. 5.5 foot light up spider I was taking down the front porch, and one of the legs got caught in my Halloween lights. And when I jerked it free, I stepped down, and my left leg isn't in the best shape from the motorcycle wreck.
Right.
And I slipped on a step and managed to fall down 6 of the 8 steps. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
Nothing's broken.
That's good. That's
so
good.
I better stay home tonight because riding in the car up there might be a little bit much. So
well, I mean, that's like almost 3 hours on the road. That's not something you need to do.
I'm self-medicating. Don't worry about it. I'll be fine. So, glad to be here.
That's good. No, I'm glad that you're able to at least join us this way. And there's no problem with that. I mean, we can hear you and see you just fine. And we also have Father Chris all the way from Australia. How you doing tonight, Father, on this new season?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Of course, it's spring for us here.
Yes.
Springtime. So this is pretty much the best time of year, I reckon, here, because it's, we still get the odd sort of cool snap. It's just perfect weather. We're not too hot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, going okay. Been busy with work and projects and other things, but the sort of good end of busy. My brain's firing off. So hopefully that bodes well for this new season.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. The same here too. I mean, I think it's been very busy. It's been very hectic, but it's all been good, really good stuff too. I'm always happy when it takes that direction because, Murphy's Law is a thing. And typically when there's erratic change, it's not good, but this time it was. So quite a few things going on.
It took me about 40 years to realize that all those annoying, laborious work things that you try to avoid and shortcut as much as possible are in fact the meaning of life. And so
it's true.
So that kind of toil is in fact part, now I don't see it as meaningless suffering. I see it as something that's what leads to the sort of, the fruit. Yeah, you can't shortcut it.
That's true. No,
you can't.
It has to be done. It has to be done. Brandon from Tennessee, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. I got this and I'm ready to roll.
All right, great. Well, I don't usually do the liturgical libations segment when Jamie's not here, but because it's the first episode and I already brought the scotch down because I already had the studio ready before she told me she wasn't able to come tonight. I thought, well, it's already here. Might as well pour it. And we have a good one tonight to start the season off on the right foot. It's actually one of my favorites from my private collection. And this is the Brookladdick 24-year-old Black Art 11.1 edition. It is. I have to say it's probably a little more than probably less than 33% left. So
now I'm thinking I should have gotten the truck and come up there.
I think you should have. Yeah. But anyway, we will still toast you from afar, and I'm
ready.
All right, let's do it. So Father Chris has his tea. I'm guessing, right? Is it tea today?
Woodford Bridge
water. Okay, well that works. Yeah. That works. So cheers, everybody, to the new season.
Cheers.
So let me tell you, the Black Art is truly a work of whiskey perfection. I'd say it's probably one of the top 5 best whiskeys I've ever tasted. It is truly at 24 years, it's exceptional. And the quality of this particular one, Brooklandic is an incredible distillery to begin with.
Right.
It has an interesting history. It went defunct for a while, and it had all the old gear. They brought it back. They don't use computers. They do it all by hand like the old ways. And so you can taste that. You can taste it in the whiskey, but you pay for it. This bottle's $650. So it's not a cheap, just go get yourself one kind of thing. If you're lucky enough to even find one. I only see one bottle of this maybe once a year, and it's always a different iteration. This is the 11.1. And if I see it, I grab it because I know I might not see it again for a long time. And this was, we were at the store, and it was close to Father's Day or my birthday or something. And so Tracy's like, you need to get yourself that because you won't see it again. It's like, all right, I'm not going to argue with that.
Such a good wife.
Yeah, she understands. She understands the good things. So this is a little bit of a birthday gift. A little bit late here, but no, actually it's not because I've been finishing this bottle off pretty spectacularly. But this is just a wonderful dram to have. So if you ever do see it and you're somebody that's into whiskey and can appreciate a $650 bottle or better, it's probably going to be worth more next time. Seems to just keep going up and up and up. Then grab yourself this because this is definitely one for the collection. But don't hold it and never touch it. Okay. I mean, whiskey's made to drink. Okay. So collect it. By all means, collect it. Don't invest in it. I hate investors. I hate whiskey investors. I think they've wrecked the industry. They really have. Because now got these distilleries, and we've talked about this before. I complained about this before. They got these distilleries that they cater to this investing stuff. No one ever intends to drink it. They'll hold a great bottle for 80 years, and it will never be tasted because who wants to throw $20,000 at a bottle and open it and now it's gone when if you hold it for another 10 years it'd be worth 30 or 40. It's like, so it's
probably got dyed water in it. I mean, no one's ever going to drink it, so
no.
Why would they bother even putting whiskey in it?
I know, just
or they get a bottle of 8-year-old Bells with that,
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah, it's just
if someone spent $2,000 on this bottle, they're not going to go, "Oh, it tastes like 8-year-old Bells."
Yeah,
it's true.
I mean, I would, but I'm not that cool.
Yeah, right. No, I mean I think, and personally, I've said this before as well. I think after you get to like the $1,000, $2,000 mark, you're not gonna start getting into exceptionally better whiskey after that. You're really not. And just because something's old as hell doesn't mean it's good. Because it really does. It really doesn't. Sometimes whiskey should actually taste better when it is like in a more reasonable period of time, because then you're starting to get like 50, 60, 70 years in the barrel, might start tasting a little more like wood than whiskey. And that's not always a good thing. If it has to be done perfectly well. And how do you know if everything that over that, all those decades was, handled that way?
Done right,
these higher end distilleries, they tend to do very well with that. Whiskey making in Scotland is hundreds of years old. So, they know what they're doing. And typically, if you're going to spend a lot of money, it will be drinkable. It will be good. Will it be worth $30,000? No whiskey is. It's just like sports athletes, these guys that get these like $30 million contracts. Is anybody worth $30 million for a job? No, they're not. Are pop stars worth 500 million, $1 billion? No, of course not. Their talents are not worth that. They're not. It's just, you can fetch the price. People like a script.
Their brand is.
Yeah, their brand is.
Advertising and then.
Yeah, their brand is only because we say it is, though, because it's like the fact of the matter is is it really like, I get into disagreements all the time with Tracy over Taylor Swift. And it's like, she's like almost worth $1 billion now. And it's like, okay, is she talented? Yeah, I won't argue that. I mean, do people like her music? Absolutely. They clearly do. Is she worth $1 billion worth of music? I don't think her talent's worth $1 billion. I don't think anybody's is. I don't think if you're the best of what you do, you're worth $1 billion. I don't think anybody's worth that much money. But if you can manipulate the system and make it work to your advantage, and you know how to, play with numbers and manipulate people's feelings, and, people love escapism, and people will pay big money to escape. And that's what it is. I guess you could say from a capitalist point of view, that is the value of it. But from a moral point of view, I have a big problem with it, because I really think that $1 billion could be spent on a lot better things than that.
But from a moral point of view, everybody's priceless.
Well,
a human being is priceless. So every human life is precious for that reason, no matter how.
Oh, human life, but not talent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But then, look, I don't really mind. I mean, let the market decide. People want to buy a load of crap music, can do.
Go right ahead. It's just, I think it does tell something of the priorities in the world today. And I think that rubs me the wrong way. It really does. I don't have any problem with people living well and doing, enjoying things, and clearly I do. But there's a limit. If people were to pay me for the things that I do, that would allow me to accumulate $1 billion. I can tell you right now, most of that billion would not be in my pockets anymore. I'd be building things with it to enhance the world. I would not be. Yeah, what's that?
Yeah, leave a legacy.
I would.
That's the essence of freedom.
Yeah.
Like your founders in the U.S. Constitution had that in.
You're a little spotty there, Father. I don't know if it's your microphone or if it's your internet, but it's cutting in and out a little bit.
Yeah. Is that any better?
Say a few words. Let's see.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put the microphone in a different port.
Okay, that's much better now.
Yeah, it is.
It was cutting in and out a little bit. It was cutting in and out a little bit. I just want to remind everybody out there, if you would like, speaking of money, right? This show, I don't know if I wouldn't say this show's worth $1 billion, but it's worth a lot more than it receives. Let me tell you that. And the work that goes into it is worth a lot more than it gets. So if you do find value in this, please, use that QR code on there, or click the link that the moderators put inside the chat room, and, give a monthly donation, a pledge to keep the show supported. And remember, it is the church that pays for it. We don't use commercials to keep the show going. There are commercials on the audio only version, only to maintain the archives for the on-demand library. But other than that, there is no money that comes in to support this show other than our church. The church is what pays for it, and those of you who find value in it. So please, if you are so inclined and you value what we do, I'm not asking for $1 billion. I'm just asking if you could just support it for a nominal amount every month. I wouldn't turn it down, but I'll tell you, I'd do amazing things if somebody donated $1 billion. Let me tell you. Yeah, we'd be seeing real action in this world if anybody ever did that. No, I would not be pocketing the money to live well. Yeah, I'd live well, but I would make sure everybody lives probably better. I mean, that's just the way I am. Okay, so let's go ahead and start getting into tonight's show. On the second hour here, we will get into the topic on the Jehovah's Witness with a brand new guest. I think you're going to find her fascinating, and I'm really looking forward to it. I don't script this. I don't talk to the guest beforehand. I do this intentionally. Some hosts like to get, into the whole thing and kind of orchestrate it. I don't. I like organic conversations. She has no idea what I'm going to ask, and I have no idea what she's going to say. So that's how we do this show. I like that format better better than anything else. I think it makes it real. I like realism. You'll find with me, I talk a lot about ethereal things and things that a lot of people maybe don't even believe in, but I'll tell you right now, when it comes down to it, I'm a very realistic kind of person, and I like authenticity, and this show's no different. So, Brandon, I know you've got some interesting questions from the ether to start us off here this evening on season 10. So, go ahead and give us the first one.
Alrighty. So the first question comes from Peter from the network. He asks, so I might have asked this question before or a version of in the past. How do I cope with staying true to my Catholic faith, but I'm noticing signs and symbols of I practiced this so many times. Hecate, I swear. Hecate, maybe trying to reach out to me. I don't feel anything negative. Is there a way to stay true to both?
Okay, so I've as I talked about on the show, I've had experiences with Hecate before. I've had encounters in my spiritual work in the earlier days when I was a seminarian, and I've talked about how, here I am, this Catholic seminarian, Roman Catholic seminarian, no intention to even get into this esoteric realm or the esoteric Catholicism I initially intended to be fully mainstream and very conventional and traditional in every possible painful way. And so for be a seminarian to have an experience like this where a pagan deity comes to you is kind of jarring, because you're not expecting something like this. And you would think that being Catholic, I might interpret that to be rather the Virgin Mary than Hecate. I didn't know who Hecate was at this point. But the experience was such that she introduced herself to me, and then I did the research and found, oh, this is a thing. And then it led to some interesting experiences. My approach, of course, you're going to find in the Catholic Church or even in the rest of conventional Christianity that this is not looked at favorably when things like this happen. And they probably tell you to run 1,000, miles an hour in the opposite direction if it does. I don't take that standpoint. First of all, because I don't believe in fear. Second of all, because there is nothing to fear. These are cosmic forces. Yes, different religions have personified them into different types of people. Thank you, Matt Hess, for liking this stream.
Thank you, Matt, for scaring the heck out of me.
Yeah, you're going to get that little, you forgot about that, right? We got these little alarms now when people like the stream or give, I don't know if the donation thing is set up yet, but I will, if I see a donation come in, I will definitely make sure that I report it. But anyway, these are personified, okay? Forces of nature. Who created nature? Well, that's God. Catholicism, Christianity, that teaches that God did that. So these forces of nature are part of the natural world, part of God's creation. Therefore, they are a part of God in that respect. In as much as we are, we're part of God too. We're not him. That doesn't mean we are God, but it does mean we are a part of the divine nature, and that all of creation has a bit of the divine essence. Even fallen nature, even the fallen universe still has the beauty of God contained within it. And so therefore these forces that maintain and govern the cosmos are personified in different ways. Judaism would have maybe seen the same entity and considered it to be an angel. In paganism, it's a deity. Do they reach out still? Of course they do. I know this for a fact because it happened to me, and it's obviously happening to Peter here. So the fact is, it's not a matter of how do you stay true to them. You don't need to stay true to a force of nature any more than you'd have to stay true to me. If something demands your loyalty, then I would say, then the hell with you. I wouldn't do it. You're not talking about worshiping these things here. You're talking about interacting with them. And if they interact with you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being cordial back, right? Being respectful in the same sense that you would to anybody else. So if somebody were to come to you and say, hey, I want to ask you something or want to see what you think of something, well, you're not going to be like, get away, Satan, I got to run. You wouldn't be like that. So why would you do that if the force happens to be a spiritual entity of some kind or something that another religion recognizes to be a deity? I don't see any reason why we need to be mindful of that in any way other than the fact that you don't worship them. The interesting thing is I have never found any of these forces that are not traditionally Christian in nature to ever ask for my worship. They never have asked for my worship. So that might have been invented entirely. They might have more respect for God than
I think that's
we
bang
do.
on. I think that's bang on. And please let me know if my audio is no good. But what's so amazing is that the people who are so fearful of deifying something like you're describing.
Yeah.
They're not so worried about deifying their children or their partners or their family or best friends or sports team or Taylor Swift. Or,
there you go. What am I saying?
We're far more likely to make an idol out of that than we are out of Hecate or nature or and people think it's a really seductive thing. This is that because obviously loving your family is really important. Like that's and as Catholics we'd say that's the domestic church is absolutely vitally important, and you have to love your spouse, you have to love your children, what have you, but not worship them.
Right.
And I think that's the greatest sort of idolatry in the West today, is that we've made our family our God. And so it's more important that I take my boy fishing on Sunday than going to mass, because I'm doing a good thing, right?
Politicians are God.
I'm doing a good thing. Yeah, well, that happens. And so politicians are celebrities now. They think they are. Believe me, I've worked with them. They get elected, and all of a sudden they think they're an influencer. But I think people should be far more worried about that. Is it Paul asking this question?
Peter.
Sorry, Peter. We need Peter and Paul. Peter asked this question.
Yeah, we don't have a Paul in the church. We need a Paul in the church. We got to find one.
We need a Paul in the church. So I'd be much more. I'd be less worried in terms of addressing his concerns. I'd be more worried about the far more likely temptation to worship people around you. And by the way, the reason you shouldn't do it isn't just because God says no. It's because no human being can live up to being worshipped.
That's true.
It's actually totally unfair on your family, on yourself, on everybody else. No one can bear that burden. If I've got to be perfect, you're going to be disappointed.
Tracy just made me laugh. I almost lost it right there. She says, "I'm Paul." It's true. Yeah, I am the one that takes on that role in this church. That's for sure. I'm always the one saying, I hope the knife slips.
Deal.
Yeah.
Dynamos.
So if any of you, and I know a lot of you do deep spiritual work where, hey, the deeper you go, the more this is likely to happen. Deep mystical work is inevitably going to lead to encounters with things that fall outside of the Christian paradigm. Then prepare yourself ahead of time and know that this is something that could occur, and there is nothing to be afraid of. There's nothing wrong with this. This is natural. This is expected, but don't worship it. That's where the problem is. There's nothing that says you can't interact with these forces. It just means, where this comes from, if I can add a caveat here, where this comes from is in the New Testament, where it says that even the devil can disguise himself as an angel of light. So what that did is that imprinted into Christians everywhere for all these hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, this idea that they can easily be deceived. So therefore, trust nothing. And I know people that won't even trust things from God because they're so afraid that it's the devil. And that is completely in opposition to what the actual gospel teaches. It says, be not afraid. It says the opposite of this. So
use your discernment.
Yes. And that's what's lacking. People are lacking in discernment today. But it comes with skill. It does come with skill, comes with grace, and we have to cultivate those things in order to be able to be mature Christians. And being a mature Christian means you don't be afraid of stuff like that, and these things are not here to harm you. They really aren't. Okay. And believe me, you'll know the difference between something like Hecate and a demon, because once you understand the discernment, the devil's not as clever as that Bible verse makes him out to be. And the idea that, that you can be deceived, the deception is really your fault, because if you're using your discernment, you wouldn't be deceived. It's the result.
We give him too much credit.
Way too much credit. Way too much.
Yeah.
The devil can't trick you that easily. He only can trick people that are not paying attention. So pay attention, be awake. Christ always reminds us to be awake. And that attentiveness is what protects you, because
the devil as a prowling lion roameth about, seeking whom he may devour.
Yeah.
But be steadfast.
Yeah. Solid.
1 Peter, something like that.
Yeah. No, that's right. Well done. Okay.
That
So,
was Peter.
Brandon, what do you think?
But I did want to add the comment you made about even the devil disguises himself. Like I'm in the South, the Bible Belt, and so with investigating, that is the number one thing that's used. It's like, oh no, it's all demons because the devil disguises himself as an angel of light. But when I read it myself, isn't he referring to false teachers?
Yeah, in that particular context, he is talking about people that will trick you with bad teaching or heretical teaching. That's exactly right. He obviously is using it in the context to say that even the devil, can do this. So that man's definitely going to do it. If the devil can do it, is really kind of what he's saying. So he's kind of saying both things. But the context here is really a response to false teaching. And in this particular case, when it comes to the devil, you're dealing with the concept that the devil is the father of lies, which is fundamental to his character. But again, there are countermeasures for all of these risks that the Bible talks about. It doesn't give you these risks and say, oh, you're screwed. You're shit out of luck because, the devil's out there. That's not what it says. The Bible is loaded with all the weapons you need to defeat the devil. But we don't talk about those. We only talk about the fear. Christians only talk, well, we don't, but the Christians out there only talk about the fear. And it's not about fear. It's not about, you're not disempowered by the devil. You've been empowered by Christ. I mean, what more do you want? What more do you need? What more do you think you need?
It's interesting though, because I think you're right. Like in your context of where you are, not only in America, but in the South, I think that is the tendency. My experience in England and in Australia is it's the other tendency, which is that the church is only focused on the sickly saccharine, very surface level. It's all love and peace and wonderful and nice, and nothing really matters what you do. Yeah. God is just God is just here to wipe your backside and pat you down and tell you how great you are, no matter what you're doing. And so it's interesting, like on this show and in this conversation, we've got that sort of to borrow a phrase, yin and yang of the church, where you've got everything sort of high stakes and focused on the demonic, and we're on a tightrope and blah blah blah, and on the other hand, I would say even more tyrannical and certainly more destructive to people actually worshipping God or going to church or having any connection with the scriptures at all. You have the sort of, God is just the gumball machine in the sky, just this, because, and if they thought about it for more than 2 seconds, if nothing that you do matters to God, how can he love you?
Right.
He'd be indifferent. If God is indifferent to your behavior, to what to how you live your life, to whether you worship him or not, well, the opposite of love is indifference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you could even add to that and say, then he really did die on the cross in vain, if that didn't empower us to be able to defeat evil with him. If we're really that at risk,
the anti-gospel.
It is the anti-gospel. If we're that much at risk that we can be so easily deceived and so easily taken advantage of by something as simple as a ghost, then the cross was in vain, because basically what a Christian that says that is basically also saying is that Christ is powerless too. And I don't accept that. I reject that. And this is fundamental to the entire question. So no, Peter has nothing to worry about here. I just wouldn't go evoking or invoking. I wouldn't use occult actions to be able to elicit these or conjure these experiences. I'm not suggesting that at all. But if these things spontaneously occur, in prayer, or even just during breakfast, which can sometimes happen too, then don't be afraid of it and don't reject it. Listen and be cordial and respectful back. That's it. Not worship. That's not worship. I mean, not worship in the sense, look, we even get the word worship wrong. Worship doesn't mean what we think it is. Worship is not actually worship actually does mean respect. It's adoration that people mistake with the word worship. What you're not supposed to do is ever adore anything other than God. You can worship. Worship basically means respect. But now in the vernacular, we, like every other word out there, we've changed the meanings. So people think that worship's only for God. But when you read the old text about the saints, it'll be like worship this saint, which is where the Protestant criticisms came from, because they don't understand the vernacular, they don't understand the semantics, and they think that worship means the same then as it does today. It doesn't. They were talking about specifically respect. Adoration is what you give to God.
It's in the Book of Common Prayer in the marriage vows. With my body I thee worship.
Yes,
it says.
Yes,
So you're right. I mean, but because people don't use it in that term anymore,
you gotta have to qualify it.
I mean, really, what I'm talking about is, if you put your spouse or your children at the very highest point of your that you can conceive of, then you put them in the place of God, and that's where they shouldn't be.
Well said. Well said. So there you go, Brandon. What's our next one?
All right, so the next one, I saw a post on Facebook earlier today about something Pope Francis had allegedly said. He said, quote, "Every religion is a way to arrive at God. Muslim, Hindu, Christian, they are different paths." And so someone underneath had to comment some scripture saying from John 4:16, Jesus said unto them, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes before the Father but by me." And they called that heresy. So what would be your position on that?
This pissed off a lot of people online, but I think it was taken out of context.
Yeah.
But it's sloppy words. It's not heresy, by the way. I don't think it is heresy.
Well, it wasn't even what he said exactly.
No, that's right, because you've got an Argentinian speaking in Italian being translated into English. And so there's some problems.
Yes, and that's the big...
I'm not his biggest defender, but I think it is sloppy at best.
What he said, I'm not going to read the Italian. Oh, I mean, I guess I can try to read. No, I'm not going to try. I'm going to butcher it if I try to read the Italian. But what the Italian translates to, let me try to do it. Let me see.
I was going to say, I could probably do it if you want me to.
Tutte le religioni sono un cammino per arrivare a Deo. I butchered it, but it means all religions are pathways to reach God. That's what he specifically said. They changed it to sound like he said that all religions arrive at God, lead to God. They're all different paths to get you to God, and that they're equal to Christianity. That is not what he meant, and that is not what he said, and that is not his intention. The problem is again, like what Father Chris said best, is that you have an Argentinian speaking Italian better than I do, and having it translated into English by people that probably are not very qualified or skilled to do either, and that's the main issue. And then it's being reported and then reproduced in memes, and common people and armchair philosophers who think they know better than anybody, and then they're getting it wrong, and then people see the meme because that's the one that shows up on your TikTok account or your Instagram, and that's the one you think he said, and that's the one you believe. The fact of the matter is, the church has always taught. Let me qualify this. In the modern era, the church has always taught what he just basically said. There had been times in history where the church took a more rigid stance. It used to teach that there was no salvation outside the church. That was a tenet of the faith, and to a degree, it still teaches that. It just teaches it.
Pope St. Pius X said it.
Yes, it just teaches it in a different way than what it used to be. It used to be used as a weapon, to being like, this is why you are bound to hell, and only the Catholic Church can save you. And it does not take that position anymore. It's broadened the concept, and that makes sense because God is capable of all things. Jesus himself tells us this in the gospel. So what does the catechism say today? And I'm going to read it word for word, okay? And this is from starting at about 843. If you want to read it for yourself, if you've got a catechism, or if you want to go to Nicolean.org, click on the online library. You can click on the catechism link there and find 843 and read it for yourself. The Catholic Church, this is from the magisterium now. This is not Nicolean Church. This is not Bishop Brian giving his insight, okay? This is the Roman Catholic Church's official teaching. This is the catechism of the Roman Catholic Church. The Catholic Church recognizes in other religions that search among shadows and images for the God who is unknown yet near, since he gives life and breath and all things and wants all men to be saved. Thus, the Church considers all goodness and truth found in these religions as a preparation for the gospel and given by him who enlightens all men that they may at length have life. So what it's basically saying is all the good things that all religions teach, regardless of what they are, whether they be Abrahamic or not, all the good things they teach are from God, is what it's basically saying. This is coming from God.
It'll meet you where you are.
As a preparation for the gospel.
But what is good is discerned by the church. So they're not saying that whatever they think is good. Right. They're saying the goodness that exists within the soul of a human, we can recognize that goodness is coming from God. This is basically Karl Rahner's theology.
It is.
So Karl Rahner informed this, the anonymous Christian, right? I've spoken about it on the show before. I won't bore you again. But yeah, and if you read Lumen Gentium, which is the document that informs this teaching, you'll see it's a rather marvelous description of how the church operates. Also, by the way, for any critics of you and the Holy Nicolean Catholic Church, it will provide some answers to some of the wrong assumptions that you make about that too, and about our Orthodox brothers as well. So, but yeah, this is saying that it's actually not a statement about Islam or any other religion. It's a statement about God. Mm-hmm. There is only one God. We believe that. Credo in unum Deum. We believe in one God, and therefore all goodness that's inspired in men towards, which turns people towards God, is the action of Christ in the world. That because Jesus Christ is God. So it's both simultaneously arrogant. If you think we're wrong, because we're arrogantly saying all goodness is orientated through Christ to the Father. And the job of the Christian church is to recognize it within an individual, no matter what their cultural or religious background is, that goodness, and to say that is in fact the action of Christ in your life. So it's not
which means, and this is actually further indicated later in in the next paragraphs. But what it means is that Christ can reach us even outside of those conventional Christian methods. Because he's God.
Which means he exists outside of, and this was the revolution at the Second Vatican Council, actually, that a lot of people have missed.
Yeah.
It shifted the language to saying that Christ subsists in the Catholic Church, which says that actually Christ exists outside of the Catholic Church. That was the revolution. Mm-hmm. That was, by the way, it's true.
Well, it has to be, because Christ is not. Yeah. Christ is not the church. He's a part of it, just much larger than the church, much larger than
Christ is not bound by the
magisterium. And much larger than a Jewish man in 2,000 years ago in this little tiny Roman province. Much larger than that. And that's what people don't seem to understand about this, is that, when you talk about Christ being God, that doesn't mean that he's confined to just the paradigm that we've accepted about him, that there's more going on there for the benefit of all creatures, which we see also in the next verses. In 844, it says, in their religious behavior, now we're still speaking about these other religions, in their religious behavior, however, men also display the limits and errors that disfigure the image of God in them. So it qualifies it by saying that all religion, even our own, we are still subject to behaviors that reflect the errors that are part of our fallen nature, which is where religious wars come from and stuff like that. Further on, it says, very often deceived by the evil one, because, hey, it does happen with people that don't cultivate discernment. Men have become vain in their reasonings and have exchanged the truth of God for a lie and served the creature rather than the creator. kind of is a perfect lead-in from our previous question. Or else, living and dying in this world without God, they are exposed to ultimate despair. Those who, this is further down now, a few paragraphs beyond, those who, through no fault of their own, do not know the gospel of Christ or his church, but who nevertheless seek God with a sincere heart and, moved by grace, try in their actions to do his will as they know it through the dictates of their conscience, those too may achieve eternal salvation. Am we having internet issues?
Yeah, you paused a little bit. We got the gist.
Okay, let me go back and say that again. So those who through no fault of their own do not know the gospel of Christ or his church, but who nevertheless seek God with a sincere heart and moved by grace, try in their actions to do his will as they know it through the dictates of their conscience, those two may achieve eternal salvation. Although in ways known to himself, God can lead those who, through no fault of their own, are ignorant of the gospel to that faith without which it is impossible to please him. The church still has the obligation and also the sacred right to evangelize all men. This is all the Pope was saying. This is all he was saying. And people, including some bishops, went off the deep end on him with this one because they themselves don't even know their own religion. I mean, sometimes I just feel like people need to, you need to really put yourself into check, okay? And particularly if you're a bishop or you're a pastor or you're out there teaching as an authority in the church, you need to put yourself into check. You're always putting everybody else into check. Put yourself into check. What is it exactly that you're saying? And know that every single word is a reflection of that. And if you're
I have to say, it was mainly American bishops that were doing that. It wasn't anybody else. Americans are so hyper. I get it. I'm not attacking Americans, but the Americans are so emotionally charged at the moment, politically. And
we have ridiculous. You see something on social media and you read the highlight, and then you'll have a knee-jerk reaction, and then lash out to all of the people that look up to you. Take a breath. Research it a little bit, ask some questions to other folks, and have an educated answer before you go, throwing fire.
And also try laughing about it before you get angry about it. I mean, my response was to find an image of, Aztec human sacrifice and say, I don't think he means this. Do you know what I mean? But of course he didn't mean that. Of course he didn't mean that. He said, I'm joking, and so, but the key point in that, though, that because see, a lot of very liberal Christians love that verse in the catechism, but they ignore the part that says twice, through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
Yes,
we do not have that caveat in our lives. Those of us in the West who have, we can buy a Bible. Someone will give us one if we walk down the street, So the Bible's readily available to us. These teachings are readily available online. In Australia, the internet's free at public phone boxes. So nobody here has got through no fault of my own. I will give the caveat to those who struggle with the faith because of abuse. There's other things that can be that caveat, but most of us don't have that excuse. Pope Francis is talking in Indonesia to people who are Muslim, who are very unlikely to have that freedom to encounter the Christian gospel, let alone have a church that will help explain it to them. And so it's perfectly in context that he made that statement where he did. It would be unusual if he made that statement in Rome.
Absolutely. And I mean, the fact of the matter is, okay, context always matters, particularly when it comes to religious things, whether it be the Pope saying or whether it's the Bible that you're quoting. Context matters. If you don't know the context, then you need to shut your mouth. You need to shut your mouth and stop spreading, because what you do, you become part of the problem. Now you're the Antichrist. You're the one spreading lies. Okay. And that is Antichrist behavior. Okay. So people that are saying the Pope, and I'm not his biggest friend. I mean,
me neither.
They don't. I'm sure the Vatican does not like me. Yeah, and they would probably excommunicate me if they had grounds to waste their time doing it. But the fact of the matter is, I'm probably more in union with the magisterium than a lot of his own cardinals at this point in time. I really probably am. And I'm going to give credit where credit's due. And I'm sorry, what the Pope said is not what people are saying that he said, and not meaning what they're saying it means. Some people are accusing him of saying all religions are the same. No, he's not saying that at all. Not at all. In fact, the teaching is that, yes, God can reach you wherever you're at, no matter what religion you practice. However, there is still the perfection of the Christian faith that he leads all souls to. Some might not make it in this lifetime, but that doesn't mean that they're damned for it. It just means that circumstances got in the way. And like Father Chris was saying, this is a part of the world where they might not encounter the gospel in a way that is meaningful to them. So therefore, there has to be another solution. You can't be hardcore and rigid. This is exactly a very good starting point for tonight's show, because tonight we're going to be talking about that religious rigidity that gives all of us a bad name. Any people that are people of faith now have to deal with the consequences of all these cult-like behaviors that happen out there. And the Jehovah's Witness, I'm sorry, one of the biggest ones. Now, they got some tenets that I don't have a problem with. They do. I mean, they're annihilationists. I kind of agree with that. Yeah, I've talked about that before. I think annihilationism is actually the gospel. So I don't have a problem with that one. I think Plato gave us the immortal soul. I don't think the gospels did. I really don't. I think that's a Plato invention. And so I can understand why, Jehovah's Witnesses, who are very anti-pagan anything, would throw out something that was Platonic in influence. I get it.
There's a lot of Plato's cave in that first part that you read out from the Catechism.
Yeah. And the Catholic Church is very Plato influenced.
Types and shadows.
Well,
it's types and shadows.
It is, yeah. And I mean, and we have to remember the church is very much influenced by Aristotle, was very much influenced by Plato. So you're going to see that continuation of thought. But, the problem is, people want to say that or act as though Jehovah's Witness is a Christian denomination. It's not. It's Christology. Darren, thank you for that Christology is entirely wrong. They reject the divinity of Jesus. They think he's a created being. And this completely violates, of course, the Council of Nicaea and its teaching there. So
it's Arianism.
So if you're going to call yourself Christian, well, you kind of have to accept the tenets of the faith. If you can't do that, then you're something else. And I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying that all Jehovah's Witnesses are bad people, although I will find out how a person who dealt with them feels about them tonight. We're going to find out. But this is a good point, because the fact of the matter is, high control is the issue. Freedom is what true religion is. So the difference, how do you tell the difference between true religion and false religion? How much freedom does it give you? Does it support your freedom? Does it endorse your freedom? Does it provide you a means to greater levels of realizing freedom, or does it take it away? That's the difference. I hope this...
And freedom to be righteous. Freedom to be righteous,
that's
not
right.
Freedom to be a libertine that just does whatever you bloody want. That's
correct.
Destruction.
Well, no, because...
Freedom to be good.
Right, because ultimately, there is no merit in being good if you're forced to be. That's what the whole story of Adam and Eve is really all about. Okay, we got time for the last question here. Brandon, we got about 5 minutes, so we can't go long with it, but what is it?
Actually, you on the page, you were about to lead me to an epiphany, and I couldn't quite get there. When I had asked, how can we harmonize that, and no one can get through the Father or to the Father but through me. Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
No one can get to the Father except through me was what the argument you were saying, that some people might come back and say, which is why the Pope is wrong, because it's suggesting in their very myopic understanding of the Catholic or Christian faith is that when Jesus says this, it means that all these other religions that don't have Jesus as a part of their religion could not possibly lead in any direction towards God, because Jesus said you have to go through him. But again, Jesus is God, and Jesus says very substantially that all things with God is possible. And Jesus being God also, because here's where we're going to deviate with our Jehovah's Witness, discussions. Because they don't believe Jesus is God, but the Council of Nicaea established that he is, definitively said this is what the Christian faith is, and Jesus is God. Then why is it such a hard thing to understand for anybody that since all religions in their own way are trying to find their way back to God, that's ultimately what all religions are trying to do, then why would it be so hard for anybody to accept that the only way to get to God is through God? Because that's exactly what Jesus just said. So, yes, you have to go through God to get to God. If you want to get to me, you're going to have to go through me. I mean, so that's true for all of us,
To bring it really down to the local level, if for example, Brandon, you're a pagan and you spend time with me one-on-one and I help to guide you to the faith, okay? Would you say that you'd come to the Father through me? No, you might be tempted to think that, but you've actually come to the Father through Christ. It's Christ's action
working through you,
through and not just through me, through all the ideas and the learning that's come through time and space directly from him.
Yeah.
So you might be tempted to think that I've led you to Christ. You might say I'm thankful for Father Chris helping me find the way, but the way was Jesus, not Father Chris.
Correct. And that's the same thing here, is that you're dealing with all these religions that are imperfectly, in varying degrees, bringing people closer to their understanding of God wherever they're at in that particular situation. And that's Christ doing that, because there's only one God. If you're a Christian, then you don't believe that Muslims have a different God. These people that have this idea that Allah, which is just Arabic for God, by the way, but people that act like
Assyrian Christians call him.
Yes, all Middle Eastern Christians, Melkites use Allah as well. The fact of the matter is, that God, these Christians that say that Muslims are worshiping a different God. Where's this different God? I mean, that already violates the 10 Commandments there. You're believing in another God other than the real one. That's very problematic. And I would be more concerned about that person's relationship and spirituality than anyone else's. I want to thank James for liking the stream. Thank you, James. This is a ridiculous notion to think that that other gods exist. There isn't.
That's all it's saying. Jesus has no competition at all.
So the only God that could inspire any of these other religions is, of course, Jesus. Has to be, because there isn't anybody else. Now, the difference is why. So then why can't we say that, well, go and be a Muslim then, and go and be a shaman or something? Why not? Because it's all God anyway. The difference is that those are imperfect paths to Christ. The church is the perfect path to Christ. And so our job is to always strive for the best perfection. And that's the only difference. But that's not to look down on people that were brought up a different way or were raised under a different system or whatever, or even a person that was exposed to the church but just didn't speak to them. I'd go that far. Because I understand that too.
That path might take you right through hell in order to get back up.
Sometimes it does.
Why would you want to do that? And sometimes that's right. Sometimes it does. But actually, the gift of the Spirit in the church is that we can show people a way that doesn't have to go through that route, because Christ has already done that for us. So it's about the mission of the church is not diminished by this teaching.
Right.
Is to say, no, the mission of the church is essential to put people on the true path to God.
Correct.
In which there's less suffering.
Correct. So there you go, Brandon. I hope that clarifies it.
I did.
Okay. I think I can answer the next question in like less than a minute, because it's such a simple question. So why don't you ask it so we can get it out there, and then we'll go to break.
All right, so the final question comes from Marina. She says, for a miraculous metal, does it matter if it's made of silver or gold? Is there a preferable substance, or is that irrelevant?
No, it does not matter. It can be made of plastic if you want. I mean, it does not matter as long as it's properly blessed. That's the only thing that matters. It's not the object. These are not talismans or medallions. They're not magical amulets. They are.
Good luck finding pure anything these days.
Well, that's true. But I mean, even if you could, even if you wanted to spend the money on that or have it, custom made, it does not matter. It's not going to change anything, because these things do not contain the grace. It is the grace comes from you looking at it and then recognizing what it means. The grace is within you. The object has no power outside of the faith that you have in what it represents. That's the difference. And that's true for all things, even crucifixes. Okay, the crucifixes on your wall are just to remind you of the reality that they represent. It is not an amulet on your wall. I know people like to use it because of Bram Stoker, right? I mean, get those vampires away from it. No, it doesn't work like that. I'm sorry, that's just not what it is. Even holy water is not a talisman. It is just a mark of faith. That's it. So very simple way. Now I want to go to break, but before I do, I have to tell you we got something very special for all of you tonight. Okay, so usually I have our usual music that we play, from various seasons of Vestiges After Dark. But tonight, with the exception of our staple pieces, which are our normal songs that are part of the show, our added music tonight is going to be from the first one is myself, one that I wrote, my newest song I want you to hear. It's not finished yet, but it's the first finished version, and I think you will all enjoy it. I hope you do. Let me know. And then all of the other incidental songs that we're playing tonight are from our moderator, Mystic, whose real name is Danielle. She wrote these, okay, and they're fantastic. She even wrote one for Vestiges After Dark, okay? It's actually called Vestiges After Dark. So the first song you're going to hear when we go to break is mine, okay? It's my song. It's called Forgotten Memory. And then the next song is going to be Vestiges After Dark, okay, on this first break. And then when we come back, we'll have our usual. And then the following segment, at the end of the next segment, we'll play some more from Mystic, okay? So there'll be at least 3 songs tonight from Mystic and 1 from me. Okay, the first one's from me. So let's go to break. Let me know what you think of these songs. I think Danielle did a great job. I hope you thought I did too. So the first one is mine, called Forgotten Memory.
into the night where shadows play, whispers of the ancients guiding the way. Vestiges after dark, where secrets unfold. Each tale is a treasure waiting to be told. Together we explore the unknown. We are the seekers of truth and of light, navigating shadows, turning dark into bright. Join us on this journey, hand in hand we'll stand, in a world of wonder, guided by the grand. In the depths of knowledge, the light will shine. Spiritual battles under grace divine. The holy Nicolean, a haven so true, embracing the lost, bringing hope anew. A family united, strong and bold. We are the seekers of truth and of light, navigating shadows, turning dark into bright. Join us on this journey, hand in hand we'll stand, in a world of wonder, guided by the grand. We are the seekers of truth and of light, navigating shadows, turning dark into bright. Join us on this journey, hand in hand we'll stand, in a world of wonder, guided by the grand. The vestiges guiding every heart, together in faith we'll never part. Vestiges guiding every heart, together in faith we'll never part. Step into the night where shadows play.
Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of Vestiges After Dark as we get ready to dive in now to our topic on the Jehovah's Witness and what it means to be a part of a high control group, what that's like, and how to get out of it. It's going to be a very interesting 2 hours here. This next hour, we're going to just focus on our guest. And then on the subsequent hour, the third hour, we'll be taking your questions. You'll be able to call into the show. I'll open lines then. For right now, just sit back, relax, and enjoy the topic. It is not one to be missed. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. I hope that break wasn't too long there. We had a little bit of a glitch there, but I was able to hopefully catch it. But that was so again, the piano piece was mine. Hopefully you can suffer through my playing. It's still not a pianist level, but I'm getting there. And the second piece was from Mystic. So I think she did a great job. When the next break, we'll play two more of Mystics. I think they're also very good. She's done a great job, and hopefully she'll also be able to do one of my other pieces soon, and we'll be able to play that one for you as well. Now, I'm not able to, for some reason, isolate the bandwidth on tonight's show to give it more stability. So hopefully you're not getting any. I'm not seeing really too many problems, but sometimes when I can't do that, there's like an occasional glitch because I'm running a lot of different things on a not so great internet here in the middle of the woods. So I apologize for that, but hopefully there won't be any issues. And the audio tends to not disrupt too badly. So, yeah, new topic and new guest tonight, and I'm very, very happy to introduce you to Isabella Andrews, who was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness, where her life was meticulously controlled down to the clothes she wore, the music she listened to, and the relationships she was allowed to have. At 19, Isabella was forcibly removed from the organization, a process known as disfellowshipping, which led her to confront the deep emotional and psychological damage inflicted by the group's strict dogma. Over the past decade, Isabella has dedicated herself to helping others who have escaped similar high-control environments. Her journey of healing and understanding led her to write her book, I Am No Longer, where she shares her experiences and insights to serve as a resource for others facing religious trauma syndrome. Isabella's mission is to bring awareness to the damaging effects of cult-like organizations and to empower others to find their path to recovery. So that is what we have to explore tonight, and let us not waste any more time and welcome Izzy to the show. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well, and thank you so much for joining us to talk about, I think, what is an extremely important topic, particularly for churches to discuss, because, a lot of conventional churches are starting to go the way of control. Politics certainly is. So, it seems like all of life right now is about controlling other people. So this is a very important topic in multiple ways. But I'd like, if you wouldn't mind, just start off by... start us at the beginning. I always like to give new guests a chance to sort of take it where they want to go, but I'd like to know, how did this all start for you, and lead us in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed that first hour. You guys are an interesting crew. I like it.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
But so this all started, I was born into this. So for the first 19 years of my life, it was really all I knew. It goes back several generations on my mom's. I think at least to my great grandmother. So I think, was that 3 generations?
Yeah.
And I don't really know anyone on my father's side besides his sister and his biological mom. So it goes back at least 1 generation, but I don't know how far back on his side. But it was pretty prevalent coming from my mom's side. So being born into that, my mother was always very devout. She was very strict with following, they don't call it rules. They refer to it as like principles and guidelines,
Yeah.
Rules sound a little bit too rigid for them, I guess.
Yeah.
But both of my parents came from unhappy households. My mom's more of like a physically abusive home. So Jehovah's Witnesses like to package their belief system as this shiny, happy thing, so I think she really clung to it because, you from any religion get a community and a sense of belonging and answers to a lot of to that so tightly and raising us so strictly with that. So growing up at the time, there have been a lot of changes in the organization in the past, 5 years or so. particularly this past calendar year. It's been very interesting to watch it.
Yeah.
But growing up, we had 3 services a week. So Sundays, we had a 2-hour service. Tuesday nights, we had a 2-hour service. Thursday nights, we would do a 1-hour service out of someone's home, as opposed to their church, which they call a kingdom hall. Mm-hmm. But at all 3 of those services, there were interactive portions. They study the publications that are written and printed by Jehovah's Witnesses at their headquarters in New York State. So it took, you could just show up, but I couldn't just show up and be there. I had to prepare these publications ahead of time. So that was reading them, that it was paragraphs with corresponding questions. So it was taking the time to read those paragraphs, find the answers in the paragraphs. There's, of course, quoted scriptures. So it took a lot of time. It was very time consuming.
Sure.
And then Saturdays are their time to go knock on people's doors, which is what they're known for. Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons walking around in the neighborhoods.
We've all had that that knock at the door, I think, everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust me, they love me.
Yeah. Yes, I believe it. I've come across several people who have said that. Mm-hmm. But that's a dedicated 3 hours. I mean, that's 9 a.m. to noon every single Saturday. So there's your weekend, as a kid. Saturday, you don't really get to sleep in. You don't get to watch the cartoons. Everything else is second to going out in service and trying to convert people. And then Sunday, you can't sleep in. You can't really make any solid point. Everything comes after you go to the meeting, is what they call it. So instead of a service, they refer to it as going to the meeting. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting to me is that it's not like the Amish, who dress differently. You can pick them out in a crowd and you see them and immediately know that they're different. There's something about them that's different. Jehovah's Witnesses, you could pass them by on the street, and unless they're dressed up in like their suits and ties and dresses and heels and skirts or whatever, and they're out in service, they kind of just dress like everyone else. Mm-hmm. They just blend in with everybody. So people don't realize how much of a bubble you live in because you're so consumed. It's constant. You're constantly bombarded with these messages. Yeah. It was very apparent to me that you know a lot more about Jehovah's Witnesses than people that I speak to in just that first hour, just referring to kind of their beliefs about like Armageddon and the end of the world. So it's all messages that most of them are fear-based. You're kind of forced to annihilate your authentic self, mm-hmm. your needs, your intuitions, your feelings, your mental health, all that is secondary or tertiary to the congregation, to Jehovah, to making sure that you're constantly in good standing with him, that you have your salvation, that, you're just constantly in that state of unrest.
Yeah.
And from a very young age, I was very aware of the weight that was put on me. I remember being in kindergarten and first grade. So 5, 6 years old, being acutely aware that if I don't preach to my classmates and at least try to convert them, when they die at Armageddon, their blood is going to be on my hands, because that's what I was told. Mm-hmm. That, I was told that I would be at fault for their life being lost. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot. It was a lot to be raised in this, and it's things that I'm still continuing to unpack in therapy. Doing a lot of inner child work. Because it got to the point that, and it's laughable now, and I write about this a little bit in my book, but it got to the point where even something like a big thunderstorm, something that I now really enjoy, but a big thunderstorm would scare me as a kid, same thing, elementary school, middle school age, because I would always wonder, oh my gosh, is this the start of Armageddon? The scriptures in Revelation talk about the sky going dark and, kind of the earthly elements being out of control. And Jehovah's Witnesses are big into Revelation. They have an entire book that they've written and published, just doing a deep dive into the book of Revelation.
Yeah.
So they're very big into that. And as a mother, I have 2 children of my own. Looking back on my childhood, it was a very heavy and ominous and fear-based group to be a part of. It was It was very consuming, all consuming. You know, like I said, you spent between Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 4 of the 7 days a week, either at the Kingdom Hall or with other Jehovah's Witnesses, you know,
Sure.
preaching and just reaffirming all of those beliefs in your own mind via preaching to people.
So when you got to the point where you were 19 now, you know, and something had to have led up to being disfellowshipped. What was the precursor to that? What were you questioning too much, or were you rejecting things that they were teaching outright? How did that unfold?
Yeah, it came by surprise. It shocked me, and I know it shocked everyone around me. It had kind of been bubbling beneath the surface, though, for several years. I got disfellowshipped because I dated a non-member in high school when I was about 16.
Okay.
So my junior year of high school, like I said, I dated this boy at school, again, not a Jehovah's Witness, and that had to be kept secret. Obviously, I got baptized as a witness when I was 10 years old, which that's a whole different box to unpack. Because what other decision do you make when you're 10 years old that you're held accountable for the entire rest of your life with very severe consequences?
Right.
But anyways, I was 10 years old when I got baptized. Now 16, I have this huge crush on this boy. We end up dating. I keep it complete secret because I knew that I get into huge trouble, you know, should the quote unquote wrong people find out. So that is where things kind of took a turn for the worst when I was 16 and 17. My mom, you know, had the best intentions, I think, as a brainwashed, devout Jehovah's Witness and a mother trying to do her best.
Right. Yeah.
But she loved to read my diaries. She loved to go through my texts on my phone, any message. She was very intrusive in that way, which was very frustrating at times. So she wasn't stupid. She figured out, put 2 and 2 together. She figured out that I was dating this kid. And of course, that just led to lies on my part. Lots of lies, lying about where I was going, who I was with. No, you know, I'm not dating this guy. You're crazy. You know, just trying to, that relationship made me feel normal.
Sure.
Dating someone who wasn't a Jehovah's, it was refreshing to be around because he didn't take an interest in me because I spent a lot of time out in service or because I placed so many publications with people, or, you know, XYZ, anything related to the church. He liked me for me.
Right.
And we met at school. And so at school, I was away from the watchful eye of my mother. So I kind of got to like take a deep breath and, you know, I got a little bit of space at school. So he was refreshing to be around. So I fought for that. I fought to keep that in my life. And so we had a lot of arguments. And she would call the elders to our house to try to have like these intervention meetings. Wow. And that would just make me absolutely furious because I was like, this is none of their business what goes on under this roof in our household. And especially something like my relationship with someone at school, literally none of their business. So it was during that time where she was using aspects of the congregation and of the teachings as almost like a form of punishment that I started to internally, I could never verbalize it to anyone, but internally I was like, I need a break. I need to get out of this. This is stifling. Yeah. But my entire family are Jehovah's Witnesses, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, my grandparents, I have like second cousins in upstate New York who were never in, and like great aunts and great uncles. But growing up, we were never allowed to have or cultivate a relationship with them because they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. So like I knew they existed and we would see them, you know, once every couple of years, once every other year or something like that. But they didn't feel like a resource at that time because I was still so heavily indoctrinated by this. Yeah. So I started to feel right around 16, 17, very stuck, very, very trapped. It was very distressing to be in that situation because I knew I wasn't old enough to walk away on my own and do something like get my own apartment, support myself, and just be like, screw you guys, I'm going to take a break and take space and do what I need to do to figure out what I want to do with this religion, because I was still underage. So that relationship ended at the end of that school year, at the end of my junior year of high school. And my senior year was really, really hard on my mental health because I felt very torn. I felt very split between, I still cared for this ex-boyfriend very deeply, but he was kind of going off to college and doing his own thing, just growing up.
Yeah.
And I was still stuck in this organization. And I found a way to kind of survive. I met this couple who did essentially like missionary work in Guyana, South America. Connected with them, went and visited them, loved it, went back and lived with them for a year after I graduated. I was okay, like internally, I kind of rededicated myself to Jehovah's Witnesses. I was like, all right, if I can use this to travel, if I can use this organization to kind of get out and see the world, I can survive. I can do this. Like, I don't have to, because I knew that I would get disfellowshipped if like the elders found out, or if my mom were to have any solid evidence of this happening or going on. Mm-hmm. I knew what would happen because I was baptized. But I was like, if I can continue to keep that secret and just continue to travel, I can survive, and I won't have to sacrifice all of my family and my friends and my community and my support system and all of that. So I decided to just kind of rededicate myself and really go all in. And it was when I came home from that year in Guyana. So it was April of 2015. My mom ended up digging up old archived messages on Facebook.
Oh my goodness.
So I was 19 and she saw some old messages that I think me and this ex like referenced our relationship, or I don't even remember exactly what it was. But she saw, she was like, I think, she ended up confronting me. She's like, I think you dated him. I think you slept with him. And if you don't tell the congregation elders, I will. And she gave me this ultimatum. And I was terrified. It was awful. It's still to this day, going to the elders and then the process that ensued to get disfellowshipped, because it was almost a month-long process, was the most traumatic thing that I've ever gone through. It was absolutely vile. It was horrid. It was terrible. I have nothing good to say about it.
Right.
But at the end of that process, they were like, yeah, okay, our decision is to disfellowship you. I think it took a week before they actually announced it to the congregation, because they do that. Nothing like a good public shaming.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah. Part of the fear tactic. I mean, you have to have some, consequence there that you feel.
Exactly. So it took, they made this decision. They told me, I knew it. I was sworn to secrecy through this whole month-long process. I couldn't tell anyone that I was going to get disfellowshipped until they actually announced it. So it was like this week-ish, a month and a week-ish of like living in this horrid limbo of not being able to talk about what was happening to me, what was going on, etc. And they finally announced it, and I did not go. I was expected to go to the meeting the night that they announced it, and I could not bring myself to do it. And I have no regrets about that.
No, that's good for you. Good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my mother was livid. I was still living at home.
Yeah. Oh, that's
but
true.
I was
yeah.
like, screw you. I didn't go. And so that was that. I was announced as disfellowshipped within 3 weeks. My mother told me that I could not stay at the house anymore. And so I very quickly had to find living arrangements, and it was extremely intimidating, very scary. Yeah. Now, a decade later, I know that I had a little bit more, a few more resources than what I felt like I had at the time. Mm-hmm. But while it was happening to me, I felt like one of my choices was the homeless shelter up the street. It was the shelter or getting back together with this ex-boyfriend from high school, who, thank the universe, at the time was like expressing some interest in getting back together. And so that's where I went, was his parents' house. But yeah, so that's how that came about. It was a couple years leading up to it. It kind of bubbled under the surface for a while, and then Yeah.
So then you're out now, and you're moving forward. I'm assuming you didn't end up in the homeless shelter. It doesn't sound like it. So thank God for that.
Thank goodness, no.
But what was life like after? Like how family reactions and even within yourself having to now deal with this change of worldview. I mean, this is the worldview that you had adopted, you believed in. It was what you were raised to believe. And now it's all shattered around you. So what's life like from that point forward?
Yeah, that is such a big question. Such a good question. The immediate, so essentially what happens, you're announced as disfellowshipped, and all of a sudden every active Jehovah's Witness cannot speak to you. So it's cold turkey. So it was a huge juxtaposition for me to go from coming home, from living in Guyana, essentially doing missionary work, Bible studies with people, trying to convert people, etc. Mm-hmm. Where I came home and everyone was praising me for doing this, for dedicating that time and for moving so far away. And they wanted to see pictures and hear my stories and hear about my Bible studies. To all of a sudden, this announcement was made, and it was like I was invisible. Like I even at one point, a year after, I saw my mom at a grocery store, and it was like I wasn't even there. And that's how I was treated by everybody.
That's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, like the most extreme shunning that you can imagine. So exactly what you're saying, everything that I've been taught for my entire life, every single person that I had ever known, I mean, there were hundreds of people in my city in Green Bay, because I was raised here, that I knew at all the different congregations. If they saw me, it was, you don't acknowledge, you don't speak to, you don't, nothing. It's like, I'm a complete stranger. I'm not even there.
Yeah.
So for that initial year where I was living with this ex-boyfriend, we ended up getting our own apartment after like 2 months of being at his parents' house. I just wanted to forget about it. It was like so traumatic and so painful and so just awful in every way that I just didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to feel it. I didn't want to think about it. I finally felt free for the first time. So I just lived life. It was fine. I mean, our relationship did a lot of back and forth, up and down, as far as like, he wants to be together, he doesn't want to be together. Just kidding, he does. Just kidding, he doesn't. So it was an emotionally tricky relationship to try to navigate with all of this trauma kind of brewing behind the scenes, in all my mental health and emotional health and stuff. But for the first year, it was kind of fine. And it wasn't until we broke up again and I got my apartment that it hit me like a ton of bricks. Yeah. It was fall of 2016, I believe, when I moved out, that I realized I had been stripped of everything that had ever been important to me. My family, my friends, my belief system, my morals, my identity, my worldview, my everything. And it felt completely out of my control because I wasn't necessarily disfellowshipped by my doing. I had to go through this huge process, and it was the decision of the elders, of a group of 5 elders. And so it felt like all this had been taken from me. Like I was robbed, and I was just kind of thrown to the wolves, because all of a sudden I was hurtled into the real world where I was taught to so deeply fear this real world. I was taught that it would chew me out, that, you guys earlier were talking about that scripture in Peter where it talks about Satan roaring like this lion, wandering the earth, looking to deceive people. Mm-hmm. You're given like these really depictions of it's going to be harmful and hurtful, and you'll get involved in addictions and drinking, and, people aren't nice and they're going to be out to get you. So all of a sudden, I believe that so intensely. All of a sudden, I'm in.
Well, because some of it's true, right? That's how it works. Because some of what they're saying is true, is based on some form of truth. It's just but it's twisting truth for the purpose of control. And that's the
right, and it's blown out of proportion.
That's the dilemma. I mean, families do this who are not religious. They want to keep their kids. They want to keep their kids. So you've got some 30-year-old living at home that still thinks that if they walk down the street without holding their mum's hand, they're going to die. And so it's not unique to religion, but religion has a unique set of tools to use, which include a Bible, which is full of a lot of information that if you start picking it out at random can be very, very devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely. It's not unique to religion. It's just it was a vehicle that they was used in this scenario. But it was terrifying to all of a sudden be put into reality with all this deeply entrenched fear of everything, thinking that everyone and everything was out to get me. But the biggest thing was their teaching of Armageddon. So for the first 4 years after being disfellowshipped, so from 2015 to 2019, roughly, I was still heavily indoctrinated. I believed everything. I believed that Armageddon could come at any day. I was still very scared of storms. As silly as it sounds now, I don't know why that's something that sticks out so strongly in my memory and in my mind, but it just does.
Yeah. It's deeply rooted.
And I lived very recklessly because I thought that at any day Armageddon would come. And if Armageddon came and I was disfellowshipped, I would die. Jehovah would kill me because I screwed up and I was disfellowshipped, So it was scary. Those 4 years were the darkest point of my life. And my mental health got really bad. I used alcohol, I used drugs and sex to self-medicate. It was the most intense feelings of abandonment that, because my own mother shunned me, my siblings, my best friend of 12 years, my grandparents, all these people that I've...
Because they're afraid as well.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. If they have a relationship with me, then, my sin is going to rub off on them and they're going to end up the same way. Absolutely.
Yeah, because there's that thing you talked about where you're responsible for other people's souls if you don't do everything that you're supposed to be doing. And so that would force them to start questioning where they went wrong.
Exactly. Which is a huge fear manipulation, that I ended up learning about years and years down the road.
Right.
So it was a very dark time. It took until the summer of 2020. I was traveling for work. I had all good things going in my life. I had found a great group of friends. I was in a good relationship at the time. I was making good money, even though I was out in Boston. I work in healthcare. So 2020, Boston was a hot spot.
Oh, wow.
That's rough. That was rough.
Yeah. But despite that, I had all these really good things going. And I had this moment where I came home from work and there was just so much going on emotionally. I was in so much pain, but also felt emotionally numb. I hadn't dealt with anything up to that point, and I felt like a lot of my well-being was out of my control because I had not dealt with any of it. Yeah. And I knew where all of my issues stemmed from. I knew that it was from being raised how I was and from going through the trauma of getting disfellowshipped and how I was treated after. But I came home one night and I was like, I'm either going to get a gym membership so I can run or do something until I'm in excruciating pain, or I'm going to go buy a razor blade. And it was really scary. And at that point, that was the turning point where I was like, okay, I don't deserve this. I've been punished enough.
Yeah.
And I need help. And so from that point on, my life started to get better. But those first few years, man, after being disfellowshipped, those were heavy, those were dark, and I would not take $1 million to relive those.
Well, I don't blame you. I mean, but I applaud you for being strong and working through it, despite the fact that those were seemingly insurmountable challenges that were in your way. I know a lot of people that feel, suicidal, perhaps even today. Mm-hmm. It's hard to look ahead. It's hard to feel like there's ever going to be another type of life available to you someday. And that's what tends to, I think, cause people to commit the act because the hopelessness becomes too much. It overrides everything else. And so I applaud you for being able to move beyond it, because clearly you saw there is a light at the end of the tunnel. This is great. And now you can help people to do the same, because what you're talking about here is the mark. We had a show, I don't know if it was last season or maybe even 2 seasons ago, but we had a show where we went to talk about, the difference between a healthy religion and a cult. And the line gets blurred a lot, because a lot of conventional standard religions actually do operate or utilize cult-like tactics, the very ones that you're describing, these kinds of familial control. Maybe it's not public shunning, but it's a type of shunning, and it might not be as formal as what you're talking about, but it has the same effect on people, to the point that it applies with what you talk about now, this religious trauma syndrome. So I guess for the sake of people who might not be familiar with that term, if you could maybe outline what it is, what the symptoms of it are, and how it's treated.
Yeah. To be fair, I'm still learning a lot about it. So I started professional therapy. I think she was technically a life coach, but it was therapy.
Yeah, sure.
In the beginning of 2021. And so it was with her. Her name was Emily. She's amazing. I have to shout out the organization Journey Free. Anyone who's listening or watching or watches in the future, that was where I found this help. They specialize in helping people who come from cults or high control groups. The first time I went onto their website, I found them on another YouTube person that I follow. I broke out in tears, because everything that I was seeing and reading, I was like, oh my gosh, this is my life.
Yeah.
But religious trauma syndrome. So obviously it happens it's something that's unique to people coming from high control, fundamentalist groups, religions, or something that is officially a cult. Jehovah's Witnesses are not officially classified as a cult, but like you said, have many cult-like characteristics.
They got too much money, I think, to be classified as a cult right now. That's the only thing that's protecting them. I think it's the money. It's the capital.
The church would call them a cult.
It's shocking.
Yeah. Do you consider them a cult? I'm assuming you do.
I do. Yeah. I refer to them as a cult. Yeah. Just
they got their 501c3 though, don't they?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No, because of my personal experience, it felt very culty. It's they create that us versus them, the insiders and outsiders, and it's hard to get in and it's hard to get out. Yeah. And once you get out, it's you're punished for a long time.
Coming from a law enforcement standpoint, it sounds just like a street gang that I used to investigate as a cop. It's no different when you break it down.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's no different. It's a street gang.
My gosh.
Yep.
I love that.
And they're destroying people's lives the same way,
destroying people's lives, and we would lock up the members, and they were so indoctrinated, we'd lock up the same kids over and over again, and the crimes just got worse and worse, and they were your true believers that you just could not break.
Yeah.
So deprogramming is not easy.
Yeah, no, it's really not. And that's the thing, is that extends to other areas besides just religion. And that's a perfect example. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to witness.
It really is.
To be able to see what's going on and not be able to do anything. Like, the person has to help themselves, at least have the mentality of it. But the religious trauma syndrome, what I was experiencing is like, I didn't find joy in things that I liked doing before, different hobbies and crafts and cooking and hanging with friends. I was emotionally numb. I felt like I had flipped a switch to my emotions, to where in certain not certain relationships, but in one specific, I was completely emotionally detached. So like, this person that I was dating, they could sit and like weep to me about an issue that we had going on between us. And I could be like, I need to get up for bed in the morning, or I need to get up for work in the morning. Like, are you done? Yeah. Like, I just completely was detached.
Yeah.
I lost all sense of my empathy in those types of situations. And it created issues. It created issues in my personal life. And the best way that I could describe how I was feeling and how I described it to the person who reached out to me from Journey Free, from this organization, is that my mind felt like this giant ball of multicolored yarn. And it all the different colors represented like all my issues and my trauma, whatever. And I knew where it came from. I knew where I got all these different kinds of yarn. I knew that I had to separate it and that would make me feel better, but I couldn't find the start of any single color. I couldn't describe what had happened. I didn't have the vocabulary. I still felt like I was in this weird limbo. I wasn't happy. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin. I lacked emotion, but also certain things made me very emotional. It was a very strange way to live. I was very disconnected from myself. And all of those feelings are symptoms of this religious trauma syndrome, losing interest in things you like, being emotionally numb, but overly emotional at other things. And it's actually like a branch off of complex PTSD. So it isn't necessarily considered, you're not having those flashbacks of PTSD. It's kind of like a subgroup of that.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, what you're describing is so familiar to me. I was part of mainstream Anglicanism as a priest, and a lot of what you've just described, I have experienced leaving it. Even
intense.
Though I'm a priest and I believe the gospel and I'm a Catholic now and what have you, but so in other words, I haven't lost my faith, but there's a lot of what I'm just trying to get across, that even in what is respectable mainstream normal Christianity, those traits exist.
Well, it comes back down to, I think, dogmatism. Ultimately, what you're describing is a type of extreme, both of you are describing a type of extreme dogmatism. And this is what happens. The more dogmatic the denomination or the religion or the organization, whatever, the more controlling it is going to become, because it's a twofold thing. And I think that you so eloquently expressed it when you talked about how you felt responsible for this other person. If you didn't live up to what was expected of you, then you are complicit in this person's ultimate destruction. And so what happens is, not only do you get this organization that's teaching control, but they're also teaching that if you don't exercise these controls, you're now complicit. So it really is substantial brainwashing. I mean, in a way that you got to really unravel that, which takes, as you probably have found, years to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
especially if you've taken any kind of a stand. If I'd have gone with the flow, I would have had no trauma at all.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and neither did you.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. Holly in the chat has asked a question.
The very good one too.
Cassie, it's a good one. So if you don't mind me putting,
let's get to it.
One. She's Australian, so she has great questions. Holly says, "Do you believe that ultimately being disfellowshipped was actually God protecting you?"
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
because I might say that's the Holy Spirit leading you away from error.
Yeah. I don't believe in like the Christian form of God anymore, like that singular. You think of the old guy with white hair and the crown and the light behind him up, with the clouds surrounding him. I don't believe in that type of God anymore. But I do think that getting disfellowshipped was the best thing to have ever happened to me, even though this day, hands down, the most traumatizing thing. Going through that process was terrible. I do feel like if I could go back, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't do anything different. Even if I knew the years that would go by with how much I suffered, which sounds dramatic a little bit, but it's truly how I felt going through it. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it. So whatever it was, God, the universe, some sort of energy. Maybe it was. I mean, I know now today that I am not cut out to be a Jehovah's Witness. That's where I started this life, but it is certainly not.
Well, that's progress.
Life.
What do you see how do you define yourself spiritually today?
I've been asked that question on a couple different podcasts that I've been on.
Because what you described, honestly, not to interrupt, but what you've described, would be justification for just about anybody to just become an agnostic or an atheist just because you're done with it. You're done with the whole thing. I wouldn't blame you if you chose that path.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, organized religion as a whole is a big turnoff.
Yeah.
So anything with any type of structure, I'm good on. I don't want to have to be somewhere on Sundays. I don't want to feel like I have to devote my time on a certain day or for a certain thing. And if I don't devote that time, I don't want to feel guilty. I don't want any of that. I don't want anyone telling me how I need to present myself, how I need to look, who I can and cannot connect with and be friends with and have a relationship with, what I can and cannot celebrate. No, I'm good on that.
Yeah. You've had enough of that for a lifetime, I'm sure.
Yes. Yeah. My spiritual journey and my spiritual healing, I think, is still an avenue that is untouched. My first time in therapy was my survival. So it was getting me to a point where I was like, I could take a deep breath. I had gained the vocabulary and the knowledge to describe what had happened to me. I'd gotten the validation that I'm not crazy. I'm not the problem. I'm not being dramatic. This stuff is real and has names, like religious trauma syndrome, like fear indoctrination and phobia indoctrination and different types of guilt manipulations. This is real. This is studied. This is measurable and tangible. So that was my first round of therapy. My second round of therapy was kind of at the beginning of this year. I found out that our second child was a girl last fall, and I panicked. I was absolutely terrified, and I felt like a horrible mother. Our first child was a son, so our second child, finding out it was a girl, I did the blood test at 10 weeks because I was like, if we're having a girl, I need to start healing my mother wound, because that is a big one. That's a huge one, because there's so much goes back to me and my mom and our relationship and lack thereof. And it's a huge beast. It feels like a huge beast for me to tackle. So I started doing that because I was like, I need to get my head right. If I'm going to have a girl, I need to start, dealing with this so I don't continue to pass on this generational trauma. And so I started to address that. We did a lot of inner child work that is by no means done. Just kind of taking a back burner with a newborn at home. So I feel like my spirituality, it's coming down the pike, but there's been other things that have needed a priority,
It sounds like you definitely shouldn't rush it either. I think that's just something that
she's doing exactly what she needs to do.
Yeah, I agree.
I think there's no doubt that something divine touched you on the shoulder and got you out of it. And here you are, you've written a book, you're helping others go through the same thing. And about the generational curse, if you want to call it, and that you need to address it. And so kudos to you for at least recognizing that, hey, I need to address this shit right now because I don't want to become what I had to deal with. So kudos.
And then at least when that time comes, which it will, right? Whenever it comes, at least you'll then know this is now a free choice. This is not manipulation. This is not
Right.
And that's really important. I mean, that's the essence of true faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are moments where I miss feeling like I have that connection to something higher. I miss that feeling sometimes of someone looking out for me, of being spiritual. I do miss that sometimes. I do miss that feeling. But I know that I was just going through the disfellowshipping process. They assign you something called a judicial committee. So going through the meetings with this committee, I was so hurt spiritually. I was so betrayed, and I was so I mean, I wish I could think of a better word than traumatized, but I was just so traumatized by what I went through.
And you probably also look back and think, why the hell did I submit myself to these idiots? Like, and that's part 100%. Of it too, right? You have to forgive yourself for that because you were manipulated.
Yeah.
So, well, I thought I had to. I didn't think I had a choice.
Yeah.
I thought that I had to. It's funny. I used my free will to get into my car to drive to the Kingdom Hall and walked in and sat for hours with these elders. But at the same time, like, was it my free will?
No,
I don't know.
I did the same thing. I'd been a cop for 10 years before I became a priest, and that, I tell you, that's the only thing that saved me in the end. Was I went, hang on a minute, you're not the bloody law. See you later. Right. And it was my police friends that helped me out as well. Anyway.
Well, I found the Roman Catholic Church to be so restrictive and I mean, I wouldn't say it was cult-like in the sense that you're describing, Izzy, but I would say it's absolutely a parallel to that in many ways. These exclusive kinds of cliques that get generated where there's expectations involved, and God forbid you dare to violate those expectations, then you're going to hear it from all of them, and then you get criticized for it. I mean, it drove me away from the church twice, to the point that I became a Buddhist for 10 years, just to have a little peace and quiet. Honestly, because it was just misery. When you said that, you don't believe in that Christian God with the guy with the light behind him, and it's like, no, good, because I don't either. I still don't. I mean, it's like you're on the right track. I think something definitely has you on the right track. Okay, so we are talking with Izzy Andrews about her experiences as a Jehovah's Witness, growing up with that and getting out of it. And when we come back, we'll talk about her book and take some of your questions. Don't go away.
But my heart keeps beating strong. It whispers through the rain. Every struggle that I face becomes a part of me. I find the strength to rise again, embracing what will be. Hope is a flame, burning ever bright. With every breath I take, I reach for the light. I will praise through the pain, find the peace in my soul. With every drop of rain, I'm closer to my goal. My faith, my light, it cannot be contained. In this journey of life, my hope will never wane. Even when the nights are long and darkness tries to creep, I lift my eyes towards the stars. The promises I keep through the battles and the scars. I learned to stand my ground. There's a whisper in my soul that says you're not alone now. Love is a guide leading me on. In trials I stand firm, for I am never gone. I will praise through the pain, find a peace in my soul. With every drop of rain, I'm closer to my goal. My faith, my light, it cannot be contained. In this journey of life, my hope will never wane. Even when the nights are long and darkness tries to creep, I lift my eyes towards the stars. The promises I keep through the battles and the scars. I learned to stand my ground. There's a whisper in my soul that says you're not alone now. Love is a guide leading me on. In trials I stand firm, for I am never gone. I will praise through the pain, find a peace in my soul. With every drop of rain, I'm closer to my goal. My faith, my light, it cannot be contained. In this journey of life, my hope will never wane. I stand with open arms, my heart full of grace. In the arms of the divine, I found my place. I will praise through the pain, find a peace in my soul. In this journey of life, my hope will never wane. In the hush of the evening, the world fades away. A moment so fleeting, capturing the day. With whispers of twilight, our hearts start to dance. The beauty in silence hands. It draws us to chance. Beneath the soft glow, we find our true selves. No need for the noise, just you and me, no one else. So hold me close in the twilight's embrace. Let the world melt away in this perfect place. In silence together, our dreams intertwine. With you by my side, I can call you mine. Our shadows stretch along, we breathe in the night. The kiss of my soulmate, everything feels right. In this perfect stillness, our spirits take flight. A life without fuss, everything's inside. With every heartbeat, we write our own song. In the beauty of silence, we finally belong. So hold me close in the twilight's embrace. Let the world melt away in this perfect place. In silence together, our dreams intertwine. With you by my side, I can call you mine. In the beauty of silence, our love will stay forever and always, come what may.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final hour of Vestiges After Dark. We are now ready to start taking any and all of your questions for tonight's guest on the Jehovah's Witness. We are waiting to hear from you. You can call into the show at 802-321-0073. That's 802-321-0073. But of course, I know that a lot of you prefer to just ask in the chat rooms around the internet. That is perfectly fine as well. We will take your questions any way we receive them and get through as many of them as we can. Fantastic guest tonight, Izzy Andrews. I think she really is touching on so many important things, and that fine line between healthy religion and toxic religion. Sometimes it's not always clear. We should perhaps talk more about that when we come back here, as well as insights from her book. Don't go away. I mentioned that I left the church twice. I was a seminarian very young. I started pursuing monasteries when I was 17, actually, and on and off different communities, always within the Catholic Church. I did explore Orthodoxy for a short time, but the one thing that turned me off the most about all of them is the exclusivity, the exclusionary thinking, the dogmatic thinking, the control thinking, the political thinking. These were just things that I never could reconcile within myself. So I left, and then I would still feel called, because my spirituality, unlike what you experienced, I think, because it wasn't as traumatic for me, I didn't have the kinds of intense toxic experiences that you described, thank God. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that, Izzy, but it fortunately did not extinguish my fervor for the church. What it did is it sort of inspired me to want to go and fight it now, and to purify it of its toxicities that it was collecting from the way the world is today. And I think that Jehovah's Witness and even the Mormons and many other cult-like or very extreme cult-like organizations out there are also ultimately a reflection of the kind of black and white dogmatic thinking that we see today. This is the way people are. This is the modern era. This is what we've reduced ourselves down to. This is why our politics in this country are so bad. All of it is a reflection of the same general problem. So what it comes back down to is, what am I politically? Everyone that watches the show knows I'm a libertarian, for the very reason that liberty and freedom is the only thing that matters to me. Yeah, I teach good theology, and sometimes I get very passionate about that theology, and I teach it from the framework of the magisterium of the Catholic Church. That is the theology that I've adopted. That's the one I freely chose, and that's the one that I teach. However, I never enforce it on anybody. It's always given freely, and it can be rejected just as freely, and I'm not going to think any less about you because of it. And I think that this is the kind of approach. I'm not saying that my church is the best example of this. It probably isn't, but I would say that this is what religion needs to do to fix itself, because this kind of rigidity is not only leading people away, it's hurting them, it's killing them, as you described. So let's talk, Izzy, about your book now, because it seems like a lot of what you're doing in the course of you working through some of these challenges with life coaches and adopting various therapeutic methods to heal yourself, which I applaud, by the way. I think it's all wonderful. I would like to hear, some of the things that you're doing to kind of get that word out, to help other people, to perhaps find themselves again and maybe rediscover a healthy spirituality or even a healthy religion, because they do exist. They're just far and few between, and they're hard to find. And even within religion, when you get to big religions and like Catholicism, you get very healthy churches, very toxic churches, very, healthy parishes, toxic parishes, healthy bishops, toxic bishops. There's no one standard anymore. It's like there's just too much of this dogmatism. So tell us more about your book and how you help people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I still can't believe that I can say I have a book, my book. That's crazy.
Oh, I love it.
In a million years.
It's great.
Did I think that I would tell my story so publicly?
Yeah. It's personal.
I never would have saw that coming.
Yeah.
It is. I really put myself out there.
Yeah.
But anyways, so, what has been super helpful is honestly getting onto shows like this. This is my first live show, so very exciting.
Oh, great.
The rest have just been podcast interviews, which have been amazing. Everything kind of came full circle. I found this organization, Journey Free, that I got the therapy through, watching videos on Lloyd Evans' YouTube. I don't know if you've heard of him. Anyone who is watching or ends up seeing this, who has had interactions with Jehovah's Witnesses or is also disfellowshipped or anything like that, he is extremely knowledgeable. He used to be an elder. He and his wife disassociated themselves years ago. And now he keeps up with the organization. He follows them, and he almost creates like rebuttal videos. Oh. But it's refreshing because he uses secular sources and like actual intelligent arguments to refute, their fear manipulations or their fear mongering or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I had been watching his YouTube videos for years, for probably, I don't know, 3-4 years. At one point, he made an Instagram saying he was looking for people to interview, to have on a show. And I was like, oh my gosh, he posted this like 8 minutes ago. I need to comment. And I was one of the first people to comment, like, yes, here's my email, reach out anytime. And I heard back, and I ended up being on his show, and I could not believe it. I was fangirling so hard because I was like, this is literally where my healing started. Was this YouTuber, this guy that I just happened upon on YouTube and whatever, a couple people had recommended him to me. And so that was my first interview that I did. And from there, a couple other people had reached out wanting to have me on. So I think this is maybe like my 5th or 6th one that I've done. And that honestly has been the most helpful in getting the word out. I post about it on my social media, my Instagram I've had for a while. I just recently got Facebook again. I did just get onto Barnes & Noble website. I'm working on trying to get that in store. So that's been very exciting.
Great.
Otherwise, my book is just on Amazon. I just also got that into the Kindle, like the ebook format. So that has been a recent update, recent change with that. It was really cool to see after I did my Lloyd Evans interview, the outpouring of messages I got from people on Instagram, like personal messages, saying, hey, I saw you, your interview with Lloyd. This is what I went through. It was so similar. Or, hey, I've never heard of religious trauma syndrome before. That totally sounds like something I'm going through. I had a few really old friends from inside who have since left or since also been disfellowshipped, reach out and be, hey, I saw your interview. That was so cool. I didn't know that all that had happened, blah, blah, blah. And so I was able to kind of like reconnect and rekindle with people. And so all of those messages, it was so, so cool to have that much of a positive response. Cause it's always nerve wracking, when you put yourself out there like that.
Oh yeah.
It's gotta be very gratifying
Yeah.
Very
totally.
gratifying to know that you're not alone.
Gratifying, validating. I felt like I started finally to find my community. And so that was a really cool way to kind of start to spread the word, kind of get things out that like this exists. I want this book to be a resource. There's a resource page at the back of the book with Journey Free listed on there, with a couple books that I read that were instrumental in my healing. Lloyd Evans' YouTube page is on there, the name of one of my life coaches, the first woman that I worked with, Emily Hedrick, her name is back there. So it was really cool because not only did, like I said, I get to reconnect and be like, oh my gosh, it's been, 10 years since we spoke. But then, all these new people where I was like, hey, I know exactly what you're going through. This and this and this really helped me, and feel free to check it out, and feel free to reach out to me again, blah blah blah, to make all these new connections. That was really, really cool, and that was very rewarding. But I'm kind of still very much in that phase of trying to figure out how I can get the word out more, how I can reach more people. I've had this idea. I have not followed it through fruition yet. There's a local farmers market here in Green Bay that takes place on Wednesday evenings. And Jehovah's Witnesses for the past few years have their carts set up kind of on the outskirts of where the market is happening.
Right.
With their publications, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking
I do.
about?
Oh, I do.
Oh, yeah.
So, I would love to get my own little cart with copies of my book.
That would be great.
And stand within eyesight of them. Yeah. And have, ask me about my time inside, see what that's like. So I'm exploring different avenues of trying to reach more people. But as far as, the content of the book, I try to be as painfully honest as I possibly could, going through, describing how high control they are, kind of breaking that down. I quote a psychologist, Daryl Ray, a lot because he has this awesome book called The God Virus. So I am very scientifically minded. So I totally appreciate his comparison of a virus, characteristics of a virus, and comparing it to high control religions, because the comparison is clear as day to me. And I think that's fantastic what he does.
Yeah.
So I go through and I quote a lot of his work, his book. But at the end, I interviewed 8 other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. Some of them are disfellowshipped. Some of them have disassociated themselves of their own accord, which is something that I will always have a special reverence for, because that to me takes a strength that I don't know if I have within myself. I mean, to disassociate yourself willingly, to be able to wake up while you're in that situation, while you're in that religion, and to be able to see and be like, this is not for me, and to know what you're about to go through, what you're about to put yourself through, and to walk away anyways, is just something that's just so awe-inspiring for me. So some of these people did that. They disassociated themselves. 6 of the 8 people I know personally from inside, and then 2 of them were people that I was not close with or didn't know, and they reached out to me on social media. And I just asked them, what was your experience and how do you view the organization now? Because I didn't want my book to be this work of just shitting on Jehovah's Witnesses, of just this angry thing of like, I don't know.
Would.
Yeah. Well, excellent. So I talked to these 8 people, and, I asked them, because I want people to see that there's a spectrum, coming out of anything like this, any similar experience or the same experience. Some people have a lot of anger. I had and do have a lot of anger towards it. Some people feel very resentful. Some people are more at peace with it. Some people felt like able to take the good things from it and were able to walk away, and they're okay with that. And it was not super traumatizing for them, and that's amazing. And some of them speak so eloquently. It was a whole separate experience in and of itself, collecting those interviews and doing those interviews. And some of them are hard to read.
Yeah.
Some of them are very dramatic. Some of them brought me to tears, because it was people I knew, and I remembered them kind of disappearing and falling off the scene of the congregation, and when we were teenagers. And I remember what I was told, by other members, but I didn't know the truth, so a decade later to hear their experience and what was actually going on and what was actually happening to them and what they were going through, it was devastating. It was very devastating it was very humbling.
Yeah.
To hear their experience true time from their point of view. But yeah, so I try to keep it honest. I try to keep it real. A lot of things in the organization, like I said earlier, have changed since then. So I just try to, there's a footnote in one of the stories where I was like, this has changed. Beware. But this is what was going on. This is what it was when I was going through it, when I was experiencing it.
Has it changed for the better in any way, or is it worse?
Or are they just masking it?
I guess it might be a matter of a point of view. Because recently now there have been changes with how they can interact with disfellowshipped people within the past few months. They used to base it off of the scripture. I think it was in Matthew. I'm a little rusty on
yoking yourself with unbelievers will be what they based it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do not yoke yourself with unbelievers. Yeah.
Yeah, that, and to not even say a greeting on the road. There's a verse to that effect. Mm-hmm. And that is what they based their behavior off of. They're like, you can't even say a greeting to them. You wouldn't sit at a dinner table with them. You can't, whatever. To now, and I don't know the exact wording, because I'm not at the meetings. I kind of get everything down the grapevine through the little network of ex-witnesses. But you are, if someone disfellowshipped shows up to the Kingdom Hall, you are allowed to speak briefly with them. I mean, you're not allowed to engage in lengthy conversation. I did have my mother reach out and actually come meet my children recently, which was huge, because that was the first time a couple weeks ago that I had seen or talked to her in person since I was disfellowshipped in May of 2015. And when I asked her why, what the motivation was, it was this, that they have gotten new direction on how to interact with disfellowshipped ones, which for my relationship with her, sure, good thing. Could be a good thing. I don't know. We're still unpacking that. But for the organization, that, okay, so this group of 6 old white dudes in upstate New York called the governing body runs everything.
Yeah.
But they decided that they want to loosen the reins a little bit. All right. And now like women can wear slacks, dress pants to the meetings instead of skirts or dresses. So again, like, cool. Some old white guy finally is allowing you to wear pants. Is it progress? Is it them grasping at straws to try to retain their members? Is it, because in my opinion, there's been a mass exodus of people because of everything that we've been discussing tonight.
Holly
So,
in the chat, if I might interrupt here, Holly in the chat says she always finds ignoring unbelievers odd, since Jesus certainly didn't ignore unbelievers. I mean, his entire ministry was based on actually working towards those that were the outcast. The woman at the well is a great example of this. Is ministering to prostitutes and tax collectors, which were even considered worse than prostitutes. So what is their justification for? I mean, is it just literally cherry picking the gospels to fit their paradigm, or is there something deeper at work with how they're viewing it? I mean, I know that you don't see yourself as like a Jehovah's Witness theologian, but I'm curious from a person who's gone through it, what's their justification for how to get around all these things in the Gospels that tell them not to do the things that they're doing?
Yeah, I think in that way, they're very similar to so many not so many, but the other forms of Christianity that are on the world scene right now, where people forget we're in a really heated political climate here in the States right now. Mm-hmm. People forget that Jesus was a brown man of immigrant parents who hung out with prostitutes and poor people and tax collectors and was all for the man on the bottom. People forget that Jesus was not white. He was not privileged. And I think Jehovah's Witnesses are not immune to that. They may cherry pick, that's a good question, but they use scriptures talking about keeping the congregation clean and about bad association. And they take the vow of baptism extremely seriously. And I think part of disfellowshipping might just be a doctrine that is unique to Jehovah's Witnesses. It's something that group has formed that is something they do, and they kind of warp the scriptures to fit that teaching and that action. Mm-hmm. But as far as scripturally, I mean, growing up, it was those scriptures in, I'd have to dig out a Bible to find the exact ones, but talking about keeping the congregation clean and watching your association and how bad associations spoil useful habits. And, really now when I look at it, it's part of keeping people controlled, and they do not encourage higher education. So, for lack of a better description, they want to keep you dumb and obedient and subservient. Because
although higher education these days pretty much does that.
Touche.
That's as much of a cult as anything else. But anyway, that's another topic.
Yeah.
That has gotten pretty bad, yeah.
But yeah, I think they do kind of twist things to fit.
I mean, all religions do that. They do. You're not wrong. I mean, all denominations of Christianity in some form or fashion do this to a certain degree. They take things out of context. They very rarely do you ever see a church that teaches within the entirety of the context, instead of just saying, we're going to take this verse and just
Well, the other thing that is, especially with Christianity, critics of Christianity will say, there's so many contradictions. The truth is that it's a bit like antagonistic muscles, right? Your biceps and your triceps work opposite each other, but actually you need both in order to be able to move your arm.
Correct, yeah.
Within the scriptures, there are what on the surface level appear to be conflicting paradigms. So you're right, you've got this, what you've just described, just now about this, don't yoke yourself with unbelievers, don't let the temple be defiled, all this sort of thing. But there's also Jesus saying, don't try and separate pick the weeds out of the field, because you might accidentally pick up some good crop. Both those things are true at once, right? And so and it's really to avoid the extremes of either. Well, you've described one extreme, right, of a sort of puritanical approach. And look, I don't need to get deep in the theology of Jehovah's Witnesses, but there were no such thing until about 1870, and it comes out of a puritanical form of Protestant Christianity, right? So
they came from the Seventh-day Adventists, so.
Yeah,
so
it's like it's an error. It's an error upon an error upon an error, right? So from my point of view, I'm being very biased. Okay, so I'm a Catholic, right? So
I don't disagree at all.
And so what tends to happen in any group, now this happens within the Catholic Church as well. The difference is that because all these things are held in tension, there's corrections come, right? So that's less likely as you become more niche and more niche and more niche, so more and more exclusive, if you like. It's less likely you'll get that correction, and far more likely you'll get things out of balance. And so, and it also happens on very sort of progressive churches as well, that they focus entirely on don't judge anything and don't have any standards whatsoever, because that's too far in the other direction.
Well, that's the problem, is that you said it earlier, that there's always like a little shred of something that is true and genuine in there, and that's being twisted into this monster that, where, the Bible starts to be used as a weapon instead of a tool to enhance one's spiritual understanding or to give someone something philosophical to think about. But what I was just thinking back or reflecting back to my own experiences with the Jehovah's Witness and even the Mormons, which is a similar kind of missionary kind of work where they come to the doors, as we talked about. And I remember one time, they can't do it today because we now live on a property that is gated, and so nobody can come to my door, which I am very grateful for now. But that wasn't always the case. I used to live in a normal neighborhood, and yes, we would have almost every single week a pair showing up and knocking at the door. Sometimes it'd be Mormons, sometimes the Jehovah's Witness. And it was interesting that they came once during Christmas, or around the Christmas season, or probably it was Advent actually, where all of our Christmas lights, and my wife and I like to put up these somewhat grandiose displays, or at least we did back then. And we go a little overboard with the Christmas lights, and we have like we have 3 Christmas trees, not just one. So we go really, we're big into the Christmas celebration, both secular and spiritual. And so they saw, the lights were on, and they were coming by around dusk, so the lights had already turned on, and they were coming by, and we have also a security camera and a Ring camera at the door. So as soon as the camera detected the motion, it started recording the conversation. And I immediately looked at the camera. I said, okay, it's either the Mormons or the Jehovah's Witness. And it looked Jehovah's Witness to me. So I was like, I'm not answering this door. I'm done with having this conversation. Next time I answer, I'll answer it when I'm in my cassock, and I'll invite them into my private chapel. Let's see how that goes. They never came. I was going to have some fun with them. But anyway, the camera recorded it, and so they waited for a few minutes, and then they left, and the camera recorded the entire conversation, which I listened to. And they were just chatting back and forth about the Christmas lights and how they think that this is holy, but it's not holy, and they just don't know, which is why we have to do what we do, because they need this. They need to know that this is going to destroy them. Their souls are being destroyed by this. I mean, it was a very interesting conversation, and I almost regretted not answering the door.
Totally witnessed it.
Yeah, exactly. I figured that, because there was just too many nuances there that I've gotten used to being able to tell the difference between the two. But so it was kind of interesting. And then I thought to myself, when I was in the Orthodox Church for a short time, they had the same kind of prohibitions against Halloween and trick-or-treating, and they still do. And I'm thinking to myself, why can't you just have some fucking fun? Why does it have to be? Why does it have to be this insanity where it's all, oh, the devil's going to get you. You're going to go to hell, or you're going to end up, I'm just like, it's just a way to enjoy the monotony of life. I mean, life's not too good. I mean, we're here for a time, we get sick, we die. So, at the very least, let's enjoy it to the best of our ability. Stop wrecking people's fun. So, I mean, we always took our son trick-or-treating, and we got criticized for that. And I mean, I remember one time they, I'm not going to say which church it was, because I don't want to call out some of the good people there, because they had good people, but they also had a lot of people that were problems. But the pastor came to our house to tell us to not name our son Levi, because it was a Jewish name, and that's going to lead to him being bullied on the playground. And I said, well, let them try. I'll kick their ass. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to play these kinds of games, you know what I mean? And it's just, this is why I didn't end up a seminarian with them, because it's like, this is the way I am. And that's why I'm an independent today. I don't know if you know much about Catholicism, but there is this entire branch of independent Catholicism where we're not bound by that kind of dogmatism. And I'm thankful for the fact that this exists, because I can enjoy my Catholicism without being bound by the kinds of things that you're describing, because it does exist there. But it just made me think of it. It's like, we're not that, the Orthodox will be the first ones to say that the Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a cult. But it's like, you're acting like one too, and you start creating these prohibitions against kids dressing up, as skeletons and ghosts for Halloween because you say it's satanic. That's ridiculous. That's kind of superstitious thinking, and I consider that to be the greater sin.
Yeah, wow. So many things were flying through my head as you were talking. Oh my gosh. I had Jehovah's Witnesses knock on my door for the first time ever recently, like maybe, 3 months ago or so. Mm-hmm. And that was a unique experience, because I used to put in 50 hours a month.
I was going to ask you about that. Like, how do you respond now?
Yeah.
If you can't see God at work in your life, that up until this point you've not had any Jehovah's Witnesses come around and knock on your door,
right?
And now you're in a more settled and in the process of healing and better able to cope with that. Now they come.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, very true.
What do I know?
Thought about that.
It's a test.
She's got a mission.
I mean, I traveled the country for work from 2019 until just before this new year, before 2024. So I've lived coast to coast. I've been plenty of places where I've seen Jehovah's Witnesses, where I've driven past their kingdom halls, and I know they're there. And it has shocked me over the past decade that I've never had them come to my door. But it was very enlightening to be on the other side of the door this time. It was very annoying. Yeah. It was I was like, oh, I understand now why. I've had someone pull a gun on me. I've had people set the dogs on me. I've had some very negative responses. And I'm like, oh, I get it.
No, you get it.
I get it now. Yeah.
There's always another side of the coin.
I've only ever been abusive to, and it was Mormons in this case, only once. Because I'm not, I'm more like to say, come in, let's have a chat. No problem. Sure. But I actually want to evangelize them, right?
You want to talk? Let's talk.
Absolutely, yeah. Actually, I put earlier in the chat, I think, if people aren't sure if the church or whatever group they're in is at risk of the things you described, one absolute litmus test is if the leaders, if the denomination, if whatever it is, if they're not willing to cope with being challenged, debated, discussed, all the rest of it, they're bad. That's the basic.
Able to ask questions.
People can talk shit about the Catholic Church to me till the cows come home. I'll just enjoy the discussion, the debate, the argument.
Sure.
Right. So because in other words, the foundations are so deep and strong. I'm not anxious about that. Right. And in fact, it's not my religion. It's the faith. And so anyone that can't tolerate, but only once have I been assertive to the point of almost abusive, which was I just celebrated mass at a church, for Our Lady of Walsingham for a gathering, and I walk out the church, and they're stood outside the church, grabbing parishioners as they come past and trying to.
That's crossing the line.
That is crossing the line.
So that's different. And so I went out in a cassock and everything else and said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm not knocking on your door. I'm not going to your place of worship and telling your people that they're wrong. You've got no right to stand outside my church, the Church of God, and spout your lies that you're wrong about." Actually, they were JWs. Just remember they were. And then I said, "And I think what you should do is go home and look up Arianism." And that's not like, and I was kind of so. And I looked round and my people were like. I thought, no, not having it.
That's bold. Yeah,
that's very bold.
I don't know if I've ever witnessed anything quite that bold in person, but that honestly, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, like I say, I would, if they knocked on my door, I'm come in, we'll have a chat, no problem. But well,
to give you an example of the difference, when I'm the
pastor to my people, right?
when I was a seminarian, okay, I had to do I was doing the adult education program at the church, at the local Roman Catholic church, and it was very common, very very common for people to just knock at the door when the lights were on and ask for help, ask for money or food or whatever. And I always tried to never turn people away. I would always invite them in to talk to them. And, to give you an example of the difference, at least with my influence on this particular community, is that one time it was a Jehovah's Witness that came asking. They were lost and they didn't know where they were in town, and it was an older lady, and she was wondering if we could direct her to a particular spot, and we didn't know where she was trying to get to. We didn't recognize it, so I went back to the community that I was, there were some nuns there and whatnot, and I said, there's this lady out there, Jehovah's Witness, that's lost, and we drove her to a hotel and paid for the room for the night. I don't think they'd do that for me if I was a Catholic. I mean, so
wow.
That's the difference in mentality. But I think what Father was saying, you kind of got a little sidetracked there, Father. But I think the litmus test is, can there be open dialogue? Can there be open discussion? Because if there's just rigid thinking and it's just exclusionary, you're out, this is wrong, we can no longer talk to you. That's where you've crossed the line now into toxicity. And then, the cult-like stuff gets attached with that, because
but it's also an admission that it's a house of cards, that you've got no foundation to your faith, to what you're doing,
right?
Because if you can't tolerate some pushback by some idiot like me, then what's it based on? What have you got?
Well, you want to talk about pushback? Try sitting in your front yard on a hot Georgia day, and this is when I worked narcotics, had a very long week at work. I'm sitting in a kiddie pool in my front yard on my third Sam Adams, reading a Dresden Files book, and some of you know Dresden Files, paranormal stuff. And these two young men come right up on their bicycles, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And they come up and they start a conversation with me. And I said, boys, thanks for coming by, but I'm good to go. And they're like, well, is your husband home? I said, do I need one? And they basically gave up then. They're like, have a good day, ma'am. I'm like, yeah, peace out, bye. It's like, they didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to talk to my husband. I'm like, I don't got one of those, buddy. But yeah.
Do I need one?
They didn't come back ever again after that. So,
pro tip for anyone who definitely does not want Jehovah's Witnesses to come back to their door, tell them to mark you as a do not call. That's what I did.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't mind talking to him today. It's just I don't have the option. They can't get on the property.
I do the opposite. I say, come back, bring your leader,
Bring your leader. Take me to your leader.
Never see him again. Never see him again.
Yeah, no, I always warn people, if you take their literature, just know that your
Watchtower
address is written down in the book and they're coming back. Yes,
Yep.
the Watchtower.
We used to get handwritten letters. Did you ever do that?
Yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
got those.
Oh yeah. They count that. So you used to have to keep track of how much time you spent out in service, and it was a minimum of 12 hours. So you had to go out for the 3 hours each Saturday of the month. They have since changed that in the past year. You no longer
only last year.
Yes.
Only last
I've
year
got
they changed
handwritten
that.
letters.
Only
Yeah.
report.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would sign up to what they call Auxiliary Pioneer a lot while I was in middle school and high school, which was 50 hours a month. So during, if it was really cold out, usually it was during the winter months when it was kind of brutal to be walking for long periods of time, we would just write some letters, and you could count that time as service time. So you got to hit your 50 hours.
So the handwriting was just a way to kind of extend the time, I would imagine.
Yeah. You were just,
because they were long. They were like these 20-page handwritten letters, both sides. Talking about how I'm going to
works-based religion. That's work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I think your average Jehovah's Witness, they're so they're so genuine. They genuinely think that they have found something good and that they are saving people. I always say, your average foot soldier, they do want to help people. They see people who, who have recently lost someone in death or who are facing financial hardship or whatever, and they feel for them and they think that they can help them. They think they are helping them by trying to bring them into the fold and whatever, which, depending on who they're talking to, it might, be joining that type of community, religion isn't necessarily a bad thing. Religion can be used for a lot of good. It does provide you with support and community and something to believe in, a sense of peace. There's so many benefits to religion. Don't get me wrong. So it might be good for certain people that they convert or attempt to convert. But it's those leaders, man. It's that governing body up in New York that I think they're fully aware of the damage that they inflict, and they do it anyways. And it's interesting too, some of the elders, which are essentially, it sounds like you guys kind of know how this all works, but essentially like priests, for people who don't know anything about the witnesses, are starting to speak out about, some of these things, like the Jews getting people disfellowshipped and how it causes some of them to disassociate themselves because they'll go through the first, 1 or 2 judicial committee meetings and hearings and the process or whatever. And they're like, oh my God, we're fucking traumatizing these women. We are harming people. We are not doing good. And they're starting to speak out, because I used to put a lot of blame with the elders too, but I almost classify them with like average Jehovah's Witnesses.
They're the most trapped. They're the most trapped.
Right. And that was something that I so appreciated about watching Lloyd Evans' videos, because he was there. He was an elder for like a year, Yeah. But anyways, that's something that brings me a lot of sadness now when I reflect back, when I see Jehovah's Witnesses on the street, when I pity them, because they think they're doing good and they're trying to do good in the world. And it's just it's so misguided, with this organization and the parameters and the requirements. It's a shame, because there's a lot of good people in there.
Well, it's just like Islam. Islam is another example of that, really, when you think about it, that, it gets all this terrorism and, just celebrated. We just, I shouldn't say that when I say, we just remembered 9/11. They had these, I didn't mean to say celebration. I meant to make these memorial services. And, and I'm thinking, Islam gets labeled into this. And I know a lot of and I'm really hard on Islam. I am, because I don't like theocracies. I hate theocracies, and Islam is just like completely.
They can't take criticism.
They can't take criticism, and well, look at what the Roman Catholic Church was like when it was a pure theocracy.
Absolutely.
It was just as bad. They're not good for religion, but I know a lot of good Muslims. I do. And it's sad to me that they get lumped into the label, trying to do find God the way that they know how, the way that they feel comfortable, and that the stigma has to come with it. I feel for that because, as you said, I always tell people, look, religion's not the problem. Religion is the tool. The problem with religion, though, is it's a very, very powerful tool. It's like having your own personal nuclear weapon that you can just fire off whenever you want to. And it's like, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that you have to be exceptionally good and caring and mindful. Skillful of what you do with it. Because you can destroy lives with it. Religion can destroy lives, and it does every single day. I completely understand why people want nothing to do with it.
You have something with men in charge, and I mean men as in the human race.
Yeah,
there's going to be corruption.
Yeah,
that's just part of our fallen nature.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But the worst thing is, I mean, it's the whole. Send me an evil man any day. Send me a man.
You know where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Well, that's but send me a man that thinks he's doing God's work while he's hurting me. Protect me from him at all costs. Yeah. That's how that's how the devil gets his way. He convinces people that what they're doing is good. Like, no one wants to think they're the bad guy.
Right.
Actually, the ones that think they are bad and doing bad, they're actually easier to deal with. People like, me and Jamie dealt with people like that all the time. There's a simplicity
all
to
the
it.
time.
It's the ones that tell me, well, it's like Reagan's great quote, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. They're the ones you want to be afraid of, They think they're helping you and they're damaging you.
Yeah, I know what to expect from a man who says he's evil and he does evil things for evil purposes. Right. But when you have someone that thinks they're doing good, but they're doing it by hurting people, that's who you really need to watch your ass with. Yeah.
You can't stop them.
Nope.
They're on a mission. It's different.
Well, and it's relative.
Yep.
It's a goodness that's always relative because there's always a side to that equation that does come back to people really thinking that they're doing the right thing, even when it's harmful. I mean, I see this all the time with all sorts. I see it in the secular world all that. I see it with medicine. I mean, let me give you an example, a real quick one. Very benign, but it's the same mentality. It's the same ultimate problem with human behavior and human psychology. Is I was at the beach a few months ago, and I'm very allergic now for some reason to sea lice. In Florida, it's extremely prolific there. The warm waters cultivated. They're basically the larval forms of jellyfish, right? So they get stuck on your skin, and then they do these little stings that you can't feel, but it reacts. And the more you get stung, the more the reactions get worse. So I've been stung a lot in my life. I basically lived in the ocean when I was younger, so I was always covered in these bites, and now I think I've developed an intolerance to them. So sometimes all I have to do is just walk in the water, just ankle deep, and I'll get enough bites to completely become covered in this allergic reaction, this histamine reaction that is very uncomfortable. So I got back from the beach all red and puffy and everything else, and so went to the doctor to get on a steroid series, which is typically what corticosteroids are the ones that I've used in the past to correct it. Turns out Benadryl works just fine. So in the future I'll do that. But I had to figure this out. Because when I went to the doctor, she didn't want to prescribe corticosteroids because she said she went through her little checklist on her computer. Doctors can't think anymore. No, you can't use your brain. No, you got to use your little checklist. And she went through her little checklist on the computer, and she says, "You've got the symptoms of a blood clot in your leg." And I said, "It's not a blood clot, lady. It's a histamine reaction." I mean, I'm assuming you've seen. Yeah, I'm assuming you've seen histamine reactions. This is not a blood clot. Oh no, you got to go to the ER. And I said, "Well, I'm not going to the ER."
Insurance companies say she has to do that to you. It's the insurance companies that are ruling doctors.
Oh, I'm telling you. So yeah, it is, and so there's well-meaning to that. so that, you know, but it's not for the right reasons. It's like you said, liability, and it's to save her own ass from getting into trouble. And maybe in some warped, convoluted way, they think that they're actually doing good for people. But the fact of the matter is, I know the difference between a histamine reaction, and I just went and took Benadryl, went away. But that's the same kind of mentality. This is going on in religion. But instead of medicine and diagnosis of illness, it's people thinking that they can save you. And because so much of Jehovah's Witness is based upon this annihilationism theology, as you talked about the Armageddon thing, Izzy, with the, you know, how big that is. And let's face it, it's not just the Jehovah's Witness that are thinking it's the end of the world. I have the unpleasant, I have the unpleasant reality of having to deal with bishops in my own community, in my own communion, that think that we're close to the end of the world. And I'm like, this is the exact kind of problem that makes people want to, like, keep us a 10-foot stick between us, because we look stupid. We look like we're these insane people, and this is what happens. And this is why it's like when you see the two people walking with the little suits and the black suits knocking on doors, you get like an immediate impression. You start laughing, or you just get irritated, you know, and it's like that should not invoke that. It should invoke discussion.
There's a similar thing coming from Bill Gates and Al Gore, though. It's just, you know, it's a different form of religion, but it's, you know, they're still basically the sun god's going to kill us. You know, religion
and politics is religion. Science has become religion too. But we're at the end of the show here, and Izzy, I'd like for you to share with the audience anything that you'd like to give them as far as finding your book, the easiest ways to get it, any contact information that you'd like to share, websites, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. People can find me. Instagram is the best form of social media. I'm most active on there. My username is Izzy, IZZY _ and then just the title of my book, I Am No Longer. No spaces, no capitalizations. Feel free, like I said, after that first interview with Lloyd Evans, you know, I had a ton of people message me, and it was great, you know. So if anyone feels a need to send a message or has anything to say, you know, feel free. I try to respond as quickly, as timely as I can, as a mother of a toddler and a newborn now. But you can find my book on Amazon. You can get it. Thank you. You can get it in hard copy. It's $18.99, and now ebook, yay, $9.99. And Barnes & Noble now. Also, it's $18.99 on there, and if you're a member, you get shipping for free to your house if you do that through them. But other than that, I love to hear from people. If you know of anyone who has experienced anything like this, even if you don't get them my book, just tell them about Journey Free. Tell them about Lloyd Evans. Tell them, you know, there's life on the other side, and there's hope. You can find a state of homeostasis, and you can be happy again. That's my big thing. There's a life outside of these groups, and
Amen.
You can find yourself.
Izzy, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'd love to have you back again.
Absolutely.
Nice I'd love to.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you helped a lot of people tonight, and you know these shows stay archived forever on the internet, so you'll be helping people in your sleep for years to come. Isn't that great?
I love it.
And Jamie, Brandon, Father Chris, thank you also for joining us tonight. It's always a pleasure, and I'm glad we're back on season so we can have these weeks together. And all of you, thank you for joining us for this edition of Vestiges After Dark. Next week, we will have open lines, open topics where you are the guest. You just tell us what you want us to talk about, and we'll cover it. You're all kind of quiet tonight. I guess you were really into tonight's subject, right? But anyway, thank you again for spending this evening with us, and we will see you next week. But until then, out there in the ether, God bless everyone.